Hi, this is Mark of SeaScience Film Labs. This video upload is a pre-recorded video of Amy Newman and James W.'s channel, an open mic night of why evolution is not true. So I'm going to start this out with my outro so you can get a general idea of my argument. Enjoy.
I
Once
believe it.
again, I just like to think that I'm just going out there to. Man, I can't. I don't. I'm trying
You're
to
doing the
think of.
Lord's work, Amy.
I'm doing the Lord's work. I try to make the seamen stand tall. I don't even know. Nonetheless, it is 5 a.m. You can feel the gears. We're going to hand it over to our open mic headliner because there's only the people driving the plane after this.
There can only be one, Amy.
There can only be one. No, my favorite thing still is now we have had someone tell us that they have a sexual relationship with God, and we've now had someone tell us they've had a sexual relationship with Satan. I feel like we need to get these two people together and just, maybe we can end the war, James. This is how you end the forever war between God and Satan. Is like a really nice night with wine and cheese. Nonetheless, SeaScience, we have been skeptic and ranting with why evolution is not true. That's right. I hope you had a good time. What you got going on out there, and what are your final thoughts?
I have had a good time, and I want to thank you for having me on, Amy and James. It was great getting to talk to Mark about some things. And he brought up quite a few points. He galloped a bit, it's true. He brought up 9 points in about 5 minutes. I only got to really talk about one. But since this is why evolution is not true, we'll start with the barriers for evolution, which was mutation. The nature of mutation is that mutation is a destructive biological force. It's proven to be what has caused every disorder that we know about and every form of cancer is because of mutation. It's not a creative force, and it doesn't have what it takes to create the many new forms or the many forms of life that we know now. Another thing that Mark brought up was a straw man of the argument that young Earth creationists bring up a lot of times is that they believe the animals change into other animals over time. He's trying to claim that young Earth creationists are claiming that cows change directly into an antelope, and we want to see evidence of that. That's not what we're asking for. All we're asking for is some evidence that speciation in the animal kingdom even happens, like an offspring that can no longer interbreed with its host species somewhere down the line. Just getting an example of that. So he's really misrepresenting the unearthed creationist argument because they even go as far as to ask, like, just show us bacteria that has speciated or even turned into a multicellular organism, but even into anything else other than the bacteria that it is. So it seems like evidence for speciation or the common ancestry of all life is lacking at best. There's a lot of barriers against it. He brought up E.R.V.s. We showed that E.R.V.s have reasons for preference sites. Okay, there's reasons that they're found within multiple species in the same places. That'd be because of the nature of viral infection. It only infects where it can, and that's where it matches the genome of the host that it's infecting. So there is a reason for these preference sites. If he really believes that it wasn't front-loaded from the beginning, because E.R.V.s seem to be pretty functional. If he believes that they were viruses that infected the genome sometime in the distant past, I asked him, why are mice and humans sharing E.R.V.s that chimps and humans do not? And he had no answer to that question, and he had no answer to why there's so few E.R.V.s between chimpanzees and humans. He tried saying it's because they have to infect the gamete. Well, any mutation that's passed on to the next generation is something that affects the gamete. It has to. So that's basics of bio. That's the basics of biology there. So I mean, everyone understands that. The fact is, there's only a handful of like E.R.V.s between chimps and humans. So why are there tens of thousands of E.R.V.s that do not match? between chimps and humans. Could the E.R.V.s be because of a different reason, like the reason that there are like E.R.V.s between humans and chimpanzees or humans and mice? Could it be because we share the same environment and the same viruses, and the viruses have preference sites that they adhere to when they infect the genome of the host? I think that could be why. I think it's a really good reason why. And I think there's plenty of reasons to question evolution and to not believe in evolution. One of them, again, being mainly that mutation is a destructive force. So I'm going to close with that. And also, wait, not yet. Also, the fact that his beneficial mutations are so few and far between, even if they happen to benefit the creature, he has to imagine billions of beneficial, almost directed seeming mutations, okay, perfectly inserted, to believe that all forms are a product of mutation. That is a huge leap in logic, and I'm not willing to accept it. If he's looking for confirmation that it's believable, he's not going to get it from me. That's what I'm going to close on.
All right. Bring in SeaScience on. I'm not sure if James is back, but we're going to, like a weekend at Bernie's, we are going to bring him in. There we go. Woohoo! And all right, with that, we are going to open mic it. We got SeaScience Film Labs backstage. Let's have some fun. We are Skeptic and Ranting. Why evolution is not true. And let me bring my banner down. Do 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 who who who. What's up, science? Lovely to have you on. We are talking, in fact, we are Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true. Dun, dun, dun. What are your thoughts about the topic or anything we've been talking about tonight?
Hey, I'm glad to hear it. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Amy, James, great to see you. Thanks for having me on your show tonight.
Welcome back.
I'm interested in this topic. And well, I'm happy to be here. I will talk about whatever you guys want to talk about tonight. So whatever subject you want to try and prove to me as a creationist, or
so where are you right now as far as your views go? So if we were talking about, religion or science when it comes to stuff like evolution.
Yeah, I'm a biblical creationist. That's how I identify my philosophy right now. So I've kind of dropped the Christian label because there's a lot tied into that, as I talked to you guys about before in the past. So
that's a step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, earlier on, I did hear you guys mention for one topic is that DNA is not a code. You don't believe that it's a code, right?
Is the same way that a computer code, because it is, as Porpoise was saying, it could hypothetically do anything. And so because our DNA is unable to do everything, we would not consider it a code like the language codes that we're writing.
Okay. So in the future, when we develop the ability to create our own new code, do you think we'll be able to do pretty much anything then? Like it's a programmable...
well, we can create codes.
Okay.
But it would be...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it would be the only type that I could ever, draw a comparison is in the future when we are able to create synthetic versions of DNA and are able to make artificial people. Is that a little bit closer to a code? It may be then, but it may be a completely different thing, and it still wouldn't be from the natural thing, and the creators would be us.
Okay. Yeah, the creators would be us. Yeah. I mean,
but
doesn't that just say, like, let's say that we found,
but can
let's
I
say
go
a
to
hard drive in the ground, okay? Just like hypothetical here. We found a hard drive in the ground that wasn't ours. Maybe it was, but like a past civilization. Not that that ever happened. Let's say we work to a point of where we programmed the code before, but we can't read it now. So we have no idea what's on this hard drive because we have no ability to read it yet. But once we figure out how to decode it, we'll be able to use that coding and write it for ourselves. That sounds a hell of a lot like a computer program to me.
I'm not like, I kind of understand the example, but it's like, yeah, if it's a hard drive, but we don't find any sort of technology like that would be like a jump, like something that's complex, and then it was simple, complex. Like, we don't find Egyptian hard drives. Or ancient Egyptian hard drives, I should say, because I'm sure there's tons of hard drives in Egypt right now.
Yeah, there you go. No ancient Egyptian hard drives. Yeah, and that's why it was a hypothetical, But you see the analogy. You see the analogy.
But
and you
can I just segue to what I think is the more important thing, which is some of the stuff I was talking right before you joined the open mic, but you might have been listening to, which is the comparison model. Like, there's the evolution, the diversity of life. This is the separation of how we think that different species evolved. And then on the other side, it's very specifically the boat story. The boat story is how the diversity, it was just raining so hard that all of these animals that were not eating each other, eventually they were just like, screw it. We are now allowed to eat each other, and carnivores were born. And these are the two competing. Well, one is, in my opinion, for this debate, because in biological community, it is not a debate. But right now, we have these two models, which is the boat versus evolution. Help me out here.
Help her help you.
All right.
I obliviate, not obliviated.
So before we go into all that, like the Noah's flood and everything. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I bloviated at the end. I said what I was saying twice, but you get the gist.
Okay. Yeah, so you're talking about Noah's flood, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my thing. I don't believe everything, probably along the same lines as, say, some of the other young Earth creationists do. I have a different version because I'm a different person, and we all have different philosophies, even atheists. We all have a different.
Just to interrupt you, a common thing that James and I think I got this from Matt Dillahunty or others, that we've never met someone who has had the same exact beliefs. In fact, it tends to be, if you're in like this pew and there's like the pew of like in front of you, they have different beliefs, and the people in the pew behind you, they have different beliefs.
Absolutely. In churches, but it comes to atheism too. It's just everyone has a different set of beliefs, a personal philosophy, a religion, have you, with a little r, not a big R, a little r religion.
Though so I think that tilts in our direction, though. But I get what you're saying. I think we can agree, but because I'll tell you, they can't all be right.
Okay, you're right. So what you got to do is
be wrong.
Key values, right? Key values of each. So atheism comes down to the fact they believe that there is no God, whereas theism believes that there is a God. So all theists all creationists are theists. You dig it?
For the most part, generally speaking, there are a few that you could say believe in aliens. Well, not only
Matrix.
believe in aliens, but actually think that the aliens seeded us. Though I don't believe in that. I don't think that's what happened. Though that's more realistic than God still to me, because that's in the natural realm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they could be. Don't think that's how it happened.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of atheists are leaning towards a creation through intelligent design as far as it comes to life.
Not that I know of.
Looking for that alien creator, you know, because
Yeah,
we're starting to see
okay, that's just kicking the can down the road. Somehow, life starts from non-life. On this planet and other planet, it really doesn't matter.
Exactly. Even if it wasn't an alien, yeah, like James was saying, at one point there had to have been an original. That's why the Matrix thing always, to me, the solipsism and all that kind of questions. I'm always like, well, there has to be a mainframe, a real life. There has to be something.
What the Beck in here? What the Beck?
Beck, what's up, Uncle Beck? You should all be checking out Uncle Beck. You should all be checking out Dr. Ben. Sexy just to say it like that. But right back to you, SeaScience.
Yeah, I kind of forgot where we were going with that, but
oh, trust me, when I start talking about sexy men, I get lost in thought too.
All right. Anyway, regardless, now I'm really off track. Hey, there's basic views of each philosophy. You know what I mean? So you have two sides. You have the atheism and the theists. Okay, that's what it really comes down to. So we're looking for evidence of God on one side. Huh?
That is a true dichotomy. I'm an agnostic atheist, but I think that atheist and theist is still a true dichotomy that we can talk about.
Sure. And I mean, with agnosticism, it's basically the idea that they don't believe that evidence of God exists, or that it's knowable, or that even if there was a God, that it would be knowable. You know, that's basically agnosticism.
And I like to sort it out between belief and knowledge. I believe that no gods or exist, but I only have knowledge of certain gods. Like, I think the Abrahamic gods do not exist. Or I would say I know the Abrahamic gods exist. However, I understand that just me knowing something, I still have to communicate it to the theists. So here we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, things that you know and things you believe, you know, sometimes they get confused. So,
you know. Sure. And I view knowledge as justified true belief. I think that I have good reasons to believe that the Abrahamic gods do not exist. Could I be wrong? Yes. But I think I could be wrong about many of my justified true beliefs, if not all of them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's part of your philosophy that you've come to after years of experience and learning, educating yourself through self-education, probably, you know, a lot. And
sure. Myself, both. I like to think that you got book smart, street smart. They're all useful.
It's all comes into play. We got Ember in here. We got a bunch of people coming in.
What's up, Ember? You should also be. I know that Ember was having a stream. Dr. Dino, you should be checking out all of these people's channels.
Stream must have just ended because we just bumped up a lot. Yeah.
Sending love. I know Mark Reid is about to be joining us in a few minutes. I want SeaScience to have me a few more minutes of just him talking, but we're going to be an open panel. That's what the Skeptic and Ranting. So we're going to keep on adding people in if they would like to join. Yeah, and I think not only does Dr. Dino streaming, but he went up against Ken Hovind, who should not be debating, who should be in a hospital. I'm sorry. We just keep on talking about that subject tonight. That's not Dr. Dino's fault, though. You should all be checking out Dr. Dino's channel and going on his after shows and having checking out all the skeptics support. That is actually the minions that should be handling that. But yes, I'm sorry, SeaScience. I just got distracted. James, SeaScience, did you guys know I have ADD? He's true.
I've heard that before.
Once or twice. But yes, I mean, in a lot of these literal interpretations, I think, come into conflict. This is I'm going to try and not be politically correct, because that's what we do here. I think that some of these stories come into conflict with reality. That is how I'm putting that, even though I know you think they don't. And so, is there any that you think that are like the strongest before maybe we start to add more people on?
Surrounding the Bible?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I just always find the Adam and Eve story very hard to, no pun intended, swallow with a good apple. And I find the Noah's story kind of just odd in just the whole genocide thing paired with that is the diversity. When we're talking about evolution, I mean, that is the competing theory. And so there's a lot of pot shots at, like, genes and fossils and organs that we were talking about. However, how do you think animals diversified? I guess should be my question.
Well, I mean, not to deflect, but kind of to deflect from that, is it seems like conversations about evolution often lead into the Bible instead of actually discussing why there's a reason not to believe in evolution. Where it'll seem like people will attack the man or the man's core beliefs he's admitted, instead of maybe the topic at hand.
Here's what I'll grant you.
Or anything, but I would
Here's what I'll grant you. Before you continue, here's what I'll grant you.
Let me answer your question first so that I don't deflect.
Okay. Because I'm going to agree with you and then bring it around. Continue.
Okay. All right. So your question was about literal interpretations of the Bible and how some of the stories in them are unbelievable. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of the Bible. I mean, it's the history of incredible events that have occurred. Okay. Yeah, that's great. But it's the history of incredible events that have occurred. Like, something that's in history is worth noting, say wars, names of kings. And there's a lot of that in the Bible, too. So in a way, it's a book of history, but it's also
you want to hear about the dukes. We'll tell you about all the dukes that got named.
Here's what I'll give you. The topic is yes. If I look up here, it says Skeptic and Ranting, why evolution is not true. The topic, technically speaking, is evolution. The reason why I'll agree with you and yet think that it's relevant and thus disagree, is because I think evolution is a proxy war for creationists. I think the only reason we're talking about evolution is because the creationists reject it. That if it was something else, like the theory of gravity, we would have to be talking about that. And so I think that they're kind of melded together because they're the two competing theories. I would say I would love to talk about evolution, and I think we should. I think that should be, the skeptics. I say skeptics, but on this, it should be the people who support science, in my opinion. Once again, you should be defending evolution because that's the mainstream science. I hate saying once again, James. But see reality. Do you notice that? Do you see that mainstream? It's that two-word, James. I'm going to whittle down the English language. So I agree and disagree at the same time, because I think that while talking about evolution, especially about people who are saying that they're doubting evolution, not just trying to teach the subject in a biology course. I think that creation is almost necessary, because just like that video, if you'll notice, it was why evolution is not true. But if you did, it doesn't matter if you caught the full thing. Let me just tell you, at the very beginning, at the very end, there was some Bible. A lot of Bible passages at the very beginning and the very end, even on why evolution. And so I'll let you talk one more time, SeaScience, and then this is an open mic, so I just want to get Mark Reid to join us.
All right, Mark Reid. I left a video in the chat there.
You look excited, SeaScience. You look like you can't wait.
Okay, hey. All right, so one of your points there was you said that all creationists reject evolution, and that's why it leads into the topic of the Bible a lot. Well, I don't think that's actually true. It's like you're working from overgeneralizations there, because not all creationists reject evolution. Some actually believe that evolution is a process, like biologos, I think you know. They believe that creation is initial, and then evolution is later on. That the creation of life, the initial creation of life, might have been by an intelligent designer, and that it was kind of left from there, and that God controlled the mutation to create all the different forms, and he has kind of like a hand in it. Like some creationists believe in evolution. So I think the reason that a lot of times conversations lead into the Bible is because people are tempted to attack the Bible, and more attackable points than, let's say, why evolution is not true. I mean, we could stick to that topic.
Well, I don't want to paint with a brush that leaves you in the corner of having to defend creationism. I'd rather have you as a theistic evolutionist. And I know there's people in our crowd, people in our Skeptic and Ranting community. I guess if that is the direction, then I almost... Then it's true. Then I should be just trying to accept in that. I didn't know if you were going in that direction, but and so
I don't think he is. I think he's just playing.
Not to interrupt, but I'm not going to go that way with you, because, like I've said in the past on your channel, I'm not here to prove the God of the Bible to you. I'm here just to prove that a creator exists. You know, because that's what creation is essentially. Like, I mean, what you really want to say is that we could talk about my young Earth creation beliefs, or my beliefs about the Bible regarding God and, you know, theology, basically.
Well,
but if you want to get into theology, we can. But I would love to talk to you about some of the evidence for God, or basically the reasons to believe evolution is not true, or not even that. Just basically the barriers for evolution theory is what we can discuss, like the nature of mutation.
Okay, but
that's one.
But the truth of the matter is that 99% of people only doubt or have problems with evolution because it contradicts their religion. Okay, so if we can show that the religion is bonkers and crazy, then why would you want to believe in a religion that's crazy and doesn't make any sense? You should probably just accept science and reality, and you don't need to go reading through these Bronze Age, Iron Age works of literature. Just take them for what they are. They're valuable historical records of what people thought at the time. They're amazing in some ways works of literature, but they're not literal histories of the earth. They're not literal history. And I know it's a lot harder to defend religion, and it's much easier just to criticize evolution and try to poke holes in evolution and what it doesn't show. But yeah.
And all right, I am gonna get Mark Reid, because we could probably keep on going. SeaScience, do you want to have the last word? I'll let you have the last sentence. The last sentence. You got 15 seconds. It's all yours. We won't say anything.
All right, I was just going to say that the creation versus atheism, or, you know, creation versus evolution debate still exists with or without the Bible. So going after the Bible won't change the debate or solve the problem.
You just do it for fun.
The person that will respond or will say what they would like is going to be Mark Reid. We are Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true. Lovely having you on board. I love that hat. And what are your thoughts about the video, the topic, anything to talk about tonight?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been in a few discussions about evolution today. What I didn't hear, and I must admit, I probably did come in late, but SeaScience didn't really talk about any reason why evolution is not actually true. He just sort of said the Bible. For me, that isn't any kind of sort of evidence against evolution at all. The Bible's just a book. It doesn't actually show anything. While there is a ton of evidence for evolution, I mean, we can point out fossil record, we can point out human endogenous retroviruses, we can point out the geologic column, we can point out like tons of these things have a massive evidence behind it. I think that it was one of the people that worked on the Human Genome Project, which is Francis Collins, who said that sort of the DNA evidence alone proves evolution, and he was a theist, quite a devout theist, in fact. So he's. I do agree with SeaScience on one thing, like the Bible, whether or not it's true, has no impact on evolution. Evolution will be true regardless of what else happens. And even if evolution wasn't true, it wouldn't matter to us. We don't have a religious belief in it, not like, a religious belief in the Bible that it has to be true. If it's not true, we just look for the next answer, the thing that the evidence fits the most. At the moment, the evidence fits evolution, and to an incredible degree. So, but I must admit, I didn't get any reasons why the evolution is not true. Rather, all I sort of heard was reasons to believe the Bible, which a lot of people do believe the Bible, and they don't believe it contradicts evolution. So I don't think those two are necessarily mutually exclusive.
And then right back to you, SeaScience, if you would like.
Oh, well said, Mark Reid. Good day, man. What are you wearing on your head there, man?
Talking about this is what I usually wear.
All right, regardless. This was supposed to be the Battle of the Baldies, man. And you showed up wearing a hat. I guess I'm wearing my sunglasses, so it's...
Looks like a version of Beamsy's hat.
First of all, I didn't
Does this hat make my arguments any less coherent or something? Is that your problem? Does it nullify my arguments?
Listen, Mark, I'm tired. I was just...
It's distracting him.
I'm tired. I'm Mark.
I was just out back riding my kangaroos and kicking my dingoes around all day. So I just want to say one thing. I did not claim that the Bible is evidence against evolution. We only started talking about the Bible because they were inquiring about some of my beliefs surrounding the Bible and my theology. But if you would like to work more from your assumptions...
And if I could just interrupt real second, I will keep on claiming. I think the reason evolution's even being talked about is because it's a proxy war for religion. This is our Vietnam. We, the religious are going after evolution.
This is the hill they want to die on.
Yes, because they're trying to get creationism and then intelligent design in the school system. And then we exported it. So, woo! Look out, world. So I should say we exported it, but you know what? You all exported it to us. Did we?
I don't think anybody else is buying it. I mean, we're trying to sell it, but nobody's buying.
But yeah, I think Mark makes a lot of good points. I don't know. What do you think, either one? Mark, SeaScience?
Yeah. Marky Marks. Anyway. No, I'm down. Mark, you wanna say something to her?
Well,
sorry, I'm still sort of waiting for... No, go ahead, James. Go for it, mate.
I was just going to say, well, it is worth pointing out the level of skepticism people have for the evolutionary theory. And then when you look at the kind of things that they readily accept from the Bible, it is kind of worth looking at, the dichotomy of how they, the level of scrutiny they apply to their belief system, their epistemology.
Well, I think there is an uneven bar when it comes to sort of the burden of proof one places upon their religious books and the burden of proof one places upon scientific well, what we call scientific fact that some people just can't accept. Like I'm reminded of the way that sort of flat earthers say that, hey, they cannot accept that the world is a globe, but then propose, a dome and things like that they've never seen and never interacted with as a justification. Right? I think as William Lane Craig sort of said, if you can't get over the bar, then lower the bar. While over on the sort of skeptic end, we say, hey, the bar should be at the same height for all the things you're claiming to believe. You should be making exactly the same jump for one claim as you do for another claim. So it is intellectual inconsistency that we see from people who will readily accept any story regarding their religion, yet things with a mountain of evidence like evolution, they want the bar to be, they literally want to see a cow give birth to an antelope or something, something so ridiculous that we couldn't possibly provide it. And it is this straw manning of evolution. Like usually the requirements that I hear are by people that misunderstand what it is and how it works. So I think straw manning what evolution is also a big problem. That people don't want to understand it, because then it will conflict with the biblical account too much. That's just what I find, though. That is just anecdotal, admittedly.
No, it's a great observation. But go ahead, SeaScience.
Sorry, brother. All right, so you seem to seem to be straw manning some of the young Earth creationists, trying to claim that a cow gave birth to an antelope, or they want to see that happen. That's your claim?
Well, I mean, I've got, I can certainly pull up video footage of Clint Hoven, claiming to want to see that kind of stuff. Whether or not that is facetious or not, I don't know. But it is sort of, you've never seen a X give birth to a Y. I don't know why that would be contentious at all.
Okay, I didn't say contentious, but I would say you're kind of strawmanning or misrepresenting him, because he's first he's saying over many generations, because we've been around a few thousand years now. We've seen many generations of cows, and they've all become cows.
Sure.
And then he goes on to say, before he says anything, he goes on to talk about bacteria, which have a reproduction life of what? It's a lot shorter than humans. So we would expect to see some kind of...
That's a scientific term, a lot shorter than humans.
Yes. Well, here's one of the...
I know what he means. It's a reproductive cycle. I know what he means. Yeah.
Okay, right. If you would like to know one of the barriers I have for evolution theory, it would be, first of all, mutation. Okay? Because mutation is actually a destructive biological force. And it seems to be that you guys believe it's creative, constructive biological force. It actually builds life forms and doesn't render them incapable of reproducing, by giving them disorders related to reproduction systems, immune systems, to keep them from dying off from diseases. And to me, it just seems like mutation itself is a barrier for evolution. Another thing is the fact that you believe, like we were saying, the bacteria, okay, we want to see that become a new species, right? But it's the miracle that you believe in, that a microorganism became a macroorganism. That's another barrier, is microorganisms becoming macroorganisms. I'd love to see that happen through a reproductive process that wouldn't be, say, naturally programmed like a gamete, because they're single-celled and they become multicellular organisms. But it's not like a bacteria became one. And that's basically what you're suggesting, is that this LUCA, this last universal common ancestor, a completely hypothetical organism that there's never been any fossils found of. Okay? It's completely imaginary.
I mean, you would never be able... Come on. The one organism that lived billions of years ago, you want us to find that one fossil?
No, I mean, fossils, they represent a population, So what we would expect to find is at least a chunk of some bacteria, maybe, like a mat.
Talk about the very first life forms that emerged.
Oh, those would be the I don't know, probably what does the Bible say?
Dirt. God piled up dirt and breathed into it.
Created like all the animals from
I
nothing.
don't
I don't.
But that's what I would go with. I'd go with that.
Well, I'd like to address your arguments because you went through a lot there. You sort of gish galloped along at a fair whack. So, so it's this whole idea of straw manning.
Two main points.
Well, no. Just a sec. Let me finish. I'll go through all of your points. Let me finish, SeaScience. So you said that I straw manned your sort of creationist, but these are directly creationist arguments that have been given to me. I sort of said that's anecdotal from the creationists that I've talked to. I'm certainly not saying that's your position. However, that is some of the arguments we have had, but you weren't sort of giving why evolution is not true, so I couldn't really address your specific arguments. But, it's good that you don't think that cow came birth to a pine cone or whatever thing Houghton's throwing out there. The whole idea of many generations, it takes more than just a few generations. The changes are so slight that they have to add up over like millions of generations in order to do the fundamental changes that you're talking about. It's a very, very slow process. I'm so glad that you brought up bacteria, though, because we have the E. coli at Lenski Labs, the longest running evolution experiment ever, and they actually mutated to be able to eat citric acid. So that is an example of the mutation that you would expect to see. Now, the pressures being put onto those bacteria aren't significant enough to make them mutate into a bird or something. That isn't what we'd expect to see. But we can, over a short term, in these experiments, show that mutations do happen. And you sort of said they're nothing but destructive. Well, Lenski Labs totally obliterates that because there was that beneficial mutation for those E. coli to be able to metabolize citric acid. So that is untrue. And also, and I've discussed this at length, the way that Sanford said that, these populations would collapse, they would be annihilate. That isn't what we see over our long-term experiments. When we put it into practice, you have Drosophila, which is the fruit fly experiments, have been going on many, many years. Their mutations haven't caused them to degenerate to a point where they can't continue. It's not actually happening when we put it into practice. So unfortunately, what we see from our experiments completely debunks the idea that genetic entropy is somehow going to annihilate these populations. Lenski Lab's still going. Drosophilia's experiments are still going. It's been a long time, a lot of generations. The mutation rates are not destroying them because those mutations that accumulate past a certain point get removed from the gene pool. And I can sort of go into more about how that happens. A new species of bacteria, well, we've seen a sort of new a mutation among algae, the Cladomonii reinhardtii, that basically had them turn from a unicellular organism to a multicellular organism. And I can certainly find you the paper on that if you would like. So I think that sort of jump from unicellular to multicellular is a significant change within the population, sort of showing that these beneficial mutations definitely do happen and contribute to a vast change in these organisms. This idea that you want to have LUCA, it's the fact that we've traced it back genetically to LUCA. And as I said before, even the genetic evidence alone would be absolutely, overwhelming in favor of evolution. The fact that we can trace this mitochondrial DNA back to a common female ancestor, even although there were other female Homo sapiens around at the time, shows that we definitely did evolve to this point. And the sort of things like, if you want to go into genetics, I'd love to go into human endogenous retroviruses, which show that with the 205 retroviruses that are shared between humans and chimpanzees, there is no possible way that they could have gotten there. Those viruses could have gotten there unless we shared a common ancestor.
Are you done? Are you good?
Yeah.
Talk about a gish
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Well, that
were all your points.
I got 9
He was just addressing all the points. He was just addressing.
I was just addressing your points.
Let me just
SeaScience. If you want to discuss one point at a time, bring up one point at a time. If you bring up many, I will address many.
Before your gish gap, you talked about how you weren't misrepresenting. People actually come on and tell you that pine cones became whatever and whatever.
They always accuse you of what they're doing.
It's tough when you're talking in front of people, and they're probably not explaining themselves completely before you interrupt them. I mean, who knows? You know what's going on. But I believe what they mean is they believe that pine cones and cows have a common ancestor, or you believe that, you know. So like somewhere along the history of, you know, time, there was a common ancestor of pine cones and cows, right? That's what you believe, right?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. That's what you believe, right, Mark?
Yeah. So the genetic evidence does suggest that every single living organism came from a single genetic heritage. So the way that we know this is through stuff like the mutation rates, the endogenous retroviruses that we find markers in.
Believe that, like E.R.V.s, genetic markers, a lot of the things you mentioned are the reason that you believe that. So let's go over some of the points you talked about. First of all, you said that that happens, you know, the change from speciation actually happens like from cow to antelope. If you would believe that ever happened, I don't know why you believe that would happen. But cow to antelope, you believe that happened very slowly over many generations, right? But then you also believe sometimes like mutation must happen fast, because you believe that chimpanzees changed the humans in 3 million years, right?
Okay, so I never said that speciation happened from cow to antelope. What I said specifically that isn't something that we said that would happen. So you've gotten me completely wrong and I'm misrepresenting you there. What I basically said, I'll just finish. I'll just address it. What I actually said was that cows and antelopes had a common ancestor, just like a lot of things had a common ancestor. Chimpanzees and humans had a common ancestor, and we can tell that by human endogenous retroviruses. That 205 of them are shared between us and chimpanzees, which is an incredible amount. And as we get further away from, you know, to gorilla, to orangutan, we have less of these endogenous retroviruses shared, and the genetic code becomes less similar. It does really point to a nested hierarchy of trees.
Yeah, I know that's what you believe, but the truth is, genetics are similar throughout the entire animal kingdom, you know? And I know that you believe, hey, that means they all had a common ancestor. But the view of the creationists is that means that they had a common creator or a common programmer, if you would. But here what I want to point out about your first point, that it takes multiple generations to move or speciate from a cow to an antelope or a whale, because I believe that evolutionist theory or the narrative is that a land animal, much like a cow that produced milk, turned into a whale over millions and millions of years. Well, they believe that took millions and millions. Hang on. They believe that took millions and millions of years, but they believe that a chimpanzee turned into a human in 3. What a miracle that chromosome 2 fusion must have been that made that change you believe in. I don't believe in that change, by the way. I think that people were made with that fusion in them.
No, I get that. I don't know why God would design things like that. It seems very antithetical to sort of doing different designers to reuse something like that, like what appears to be a mistaken fusion in order to sort of show that things are different. I never said that a cow turned into an antelope. I never said a cow turned into a whale. So I don't know why you keep saying that, because that's never what I said.
Right.
It's basically that an ancestor of a cow turned into both a cow and an antelope, or a cow and a whale. Where they diverge from the points, you've got to go back for. And as I've kept saying, we have a lot of genetic evidence to suggest that is the case. Whales and cows do have endogenous retroviruses that are on exactly the same part of the genome and exactly the same virus. So they share these things.
No, which E.R.V.s are...
Well, I would have to look it up, but I know that there's definitely one shared by fish and humans. So I would be able to grab that for you.
Assume that there are like E.R.V.s.
And I'll let you guys go back and forth one more time, and then I'm just going to get Ember in, and we'll just keep on going.
Yeah. No, lean forward to your mic. It makes you more convincing. Go for it. So the whole idea that you make this claim that it was created and designed individually, I think that's a claim that you really need to back up, because you're throwing that out as a knowledge claim that you know this has happened. So what evidence do you have that these things were designed separately as sort of individual products, if you will? What evidence do you have of that?
Away from the whale thing, I mean, you really do believe that a cow-like creature became a whale, and it seems like you actually believe a cow became a whale, like our bovine that we have now. When in the evolution narrative, it's actually a cow-like creature, not a cow. But here's my point. You believe that evolution happens fast slow and sometimes apparently not at all for hundreds of millions of years. If that's true, how am I supposed to know if it even happens? If you believe it happens
so
fast,
I sort of
slow, I mean by multiple generations, because you're again misrepresenting the young Earth creationist view, because they go and explain to you that they even understand that you believe it takes multiple generations for speciation to occur. But what they're asking is for you to give a little evidence of speciation that actually happens in the animal kingdom. In the animal kingdom, where you would expect to see it, a bunch of animals. Sorry.
No. When I'm good with that question, but when Mark responds, Mark, please tell me when you're done, and then no one else respond, just so I can get Ember in to join us.
Sure, no problem at all. Now I'll share my screen, and this is just an artist representation, but this is sort of what they sort of estimate the ancestor of cows and whales look like, a very early mammal that is related to both and evolved into all kinds of other things as well. So yeah, it doesn't look much like a whale, doesn't look much like a cow. Now, you're straw manning my position again, because apparently leaning forward to the mic. Can we have sort of one person talk at a time, or have you got no self-control? You've got no self-control, no discipline.
Wait, Mark. Maybe if I let you talk.
No, you have no discipline. You have no discipline. I never said that a cow turned into an antelope or a cow turned into whales. Everybody heard me specifically say that, yet you bring it up again, which is really weird. It's like you don't listen. So you're straw manning my position again. What I said is there was an ancestor of both the cow and the whale. One kept on land, one went into the water. As James pointed out, cows still give milk. So and we call female whales cows. They are cows. That's what we call them, because they do give milk and they did share a common ancestor. And we have a ton of genetic information that shows the same. I mean, I can look up the E.R.V.s that are shared by cows and whales, but you have to acknowledge that and say, hey, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's cows.
No discipline.
Baby whales are called cows.
And all right.
Yeah, I'm done, Amy. You can bring in Ember.
Fantastic. And with that, we are going to bring in Ember.
But before Ember speaks, can I just talk about his supposed E.R.V.s between whales and cows that he wanted to talk about? He did mention that, right? Didn't you say E.R.V.s between whales and cows?
We'll have plenty of time to talk about E.R.V.s.
Yeah. I mean, the only E.R.V.s I know that have been identified are between, animals that evolutionists think matter.
And I'm
letting the E.R.V. responsible for placental development. Are you aware that the whale has a placenta?
Good chat, Mark. How about that Pakicetus that you brought up? The animal you see in front of you is a Pakicetus. He believes that animal changed into a whale over hundreds of millions of years. Oh, not even that. I think it was
not
tens of millions of years.
Pakicetus, just a few million years.
But then it turned into that?
Yeah, they can move pretty quick sometimes.
Say this?
But before, you were conflating species. We have lots of examples of speciation. We can show you that all day long. It's just that you guys shift the goalposts.
See, I feel
you have more examples of speciation,
but SeaScience
than the Australopithecus.
And I'll let you say something
argument,
before I hand it over to Ember. But this is why I keep on saying the two different models are what Mark just said to you, and God did it. That's why I keep on going back to the alternative model, because you're like, it happened over this many millions or billions of years, but the alternative is it happened instantaneously, correct?
Well, not necessarily instantaneously, but however God accomplished the deed.
But we can show you speciation. It's just you guys shift the goalpost, and then you want to see things go from an amoeba to a whale.
Oh, I don't want to see it. I want to see a single speciation event in the animal kingdom that we've witnessed. Just one example. One example in the animal kingdom where an animal has changed into a new species and can no longer.
Darwin's finches, perfect example. There you go.
And I have a question for you, SeaScience. Whales placental. Are whales placental?
Yeah, whales are considered mammals. They give milk. We all know that. Creationists
Well,
understand.
not all mammals are placental. There's also like kangaroos. They're not placental mammals. They're marsupials. Same with
Platypus
right.
lays
So
eggs, right?
whales are placental, which means that the system responsible for that placenta was actually an endogenous retrovirus. They share it with humans and cows.
It's part
Can you imagine being the first to catch that virus? Like, what the hell is going on in my uterus?
Also, I'm not the first person to make this joke, but because the platypus has eggs and milk, it can make its own custard.
And no stomach. The platypus has no stomach. Did you know
Really?
that? I didn't know
we found that out
know
recently on whose stream was it? Was
The
it one of
platypus has
Doctor's?
no stomach. So much for the like, oh, they're like cars and they've got the same design. Well, looks like God forgot the gas tank on one of them because the platypus has no stomach.
What does it just go straight to the intestines, or how does it digest it?
It's got like a pseudo gizzard kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. God forgot the gas tank.
The platypus is like evolutionist kryptonite.
Not at all.
Oh.
Just
because it's catastrophic to the creationist model, so we have to project it onto you evolutionists and make it your problem.
Well, not really. It's a great thing for creationists because
it proves that God gets drunk.
Fossil ancestry is a platypus. It's a bigger platypus.
Just like us,
I know.
It has a beak.
I know a lot about
it's related to the other extant echinoderm. It's related to what is it?
Marsupials.
No. It's the echidna.
Well, another good thing about platypus for creationists is it has a duckbill-like structure. Although it's made out of different
but it's
material,
not the same as a duckbill. Different material.
So Ray Comfort runs around asking for a crocoduck for all these years, and then here's a critter that's clearly a mammal but also has duck characteristics, and that's a problem for evolution?
It absolutely is, because between animals in the animal kingdom.
And the M word you were looking for, correction, it's monotremes or the
monotremes. Yeah, I'm so sorry, I forgot.
Are not believed to be closely related, like a duck and a platypus. They're not believed to be closely related, but yet they have the same exact appearing structure on their face.
Even though it's the same exact thing, it's made out of something different. Yes, that's right. It's called parallel evolution.
You're making my point. You're making my point.
Yeah. No, it's like the octopus eyeball evolved separately than the human eyeball, and we know this because they use a different design structure. In fact, the octopus eyeball is superior because it doesn't have the blind spot that we do. So we know that those things, one did not evolve from the other. Like, it wasn't like we have a lineage shared with the octopus evolution. It's like bat wings and bird wings, right? They evolved to do the same job, so they are similar, but they're not the same. And the same is true with the platypus. It has a similar bill than a duck, but it is not the same. There's some very, very strong differences between them, but they evolved to do the same job, and that's why they are similar.
SeaScience, you have 15 seconds to finish. I feel bad I keep on giving you short times, but we have to get Ember in. But I'll give you all the time after Ember does his intro.
All right.
It's true, but I have to give him his intro.
Well, I'm gonna attack his E.R.V. argument there the most, because he believes that E.R.V.s are from common ancestry when there could be a different reason. It could be from a like environment, like virus infections. If you really believe that virus infections led to those abilities, then you really believe that a virus infecting a host is what caused those changes. That's hilarious. Let's talk about that after Ember.
And all right, Amber, whatever you'd like to say as an intro, and then once you're done, we are going to go for about 20, 30 more minutes of open mic, and then we're going to go to outros, and then we are heading out because we have been skeptic and ranting on why evolution is not true. But Amber, anything very dedicated you want to say about anything we're going to talk about tonight?
Okay, so it's been a very evolution-heavy night, and I've been getting a lot of info from the creation side, a lot of actual science from the science side, and I'm finding myself wanting to try to reconcile these two crazy positions. So I'm sitting here thinking, what if we understand that correlation does not equal causation? So what if evolution is just an illusion? What we see as changes from generation to generation, accumulating and accumulating, is the process by which the intelligent designer of your choice is creating new life forms. Because this guy's supposed to be outside of time, right? So from his perspective, every new creature is in fact poofed into existence instantaneously.
What do you think, SeaScience?
Yeah, that sounds like a creationist philosophy right there. Is that what you hold, or is that just a hypothetical philosophy for someone to hold? Like a stepping stone to becoming.
I'm speculating. I'm speculating.
Yeah. Well,
I'm trying to resolve the difference. Harmonize the ideas, I suppose.
Yeah, then if you're looking for confirmation that a creationist like me would believe that, then no, you'll get no confirmation of that from me. So.
Oh, curses. I'll have to try.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
good shot, though.
Is there's a lot of barriers for evolution, and that's why evolution is not true. One that we sort of covered was mutation is a destructive biological force, according to science.
But if everything is controlled by an all-powerful God, and it all does the actualizing his plan, then it shouldn't be possible for mutations to be destructive, because that's how he's going about creating new creatures. So the fact that some mutations are destructive kind of falsifies the God hypothesis, just right there.
Yeah, and that's basically it would for the biologos people, and that's why I don't believe in biologos or evolution at all. I don't believe the biologos philosophy that God controls evolution to create the many forms.
Well, I mean, what's the alternative? That God doesn't control evolution? Then
I
come
appreciate
new
that
creatures.
You're trying to provide like a stepping stone for people, like to come to your belief system. Like that's a good way, and to like sort of weave a web of uncertainty, or just like how it's called, but like where you're going is a good way to teach people. Like if you're really trying to reach people. Like for me, I try to make a stepping stone for atheists. Hey, maybe there is a creator. It doesn't have to be this particular one. So I'm doing the same thing. It's yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of believers who also subscribe to evolution. They just perceive it as that's the way God chose to do things, whatever their God of choice happens to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of Christians that prescribe to evolution. That's true. But there's also Bible-believing creationists that don't. And that's the majority of Christians are ones that believe the Bible. Because a belief in the Bible...
I don't think that's true.
Okay, yeah, you can deny it. But a belief in the Bible doesn't allow belief in evolution, at least human evolution.
I don't think that's true either.
Well, the Bible describes, at least the book of Genesis, the Hebrew Bible describes, not to get into that, but since you brought it up, we're going to go into biologos. It describes man being created in full form, a walking man that's capable of speech.
Sorry.
So the Bible doesn't allow belief in evolution, at least human evolution. I mean, if you want to go and be like all the other animals evolved before man, and we're going to put some
say
time
it's a
there.
metaphor. It doesn't have to be literal.
It's a metaphor, right? Yeah. So they think it's the same as like the talking donkey. Do you think that there was a talking donkey in the Bible?
Yeah, see, now you're going to attack the Bible, but again, you guys are bringing up the Bible.
Well, no.
What we're here to talk about
you brought up the
why
Bible.
evolution is not true.
You just brought up the Bible.
Oh, what? No.
This is like Ken
brought up the Bible.
This is like Ken Hovind, who reads from the Bible during a debate that says, "What? We're talking about the Bible? I don't want to talk about.
See, however
I'm
you
not
want,
here to talk about the Bible."
We could talk about why evolution is not true if we'd like, because there are barriers for evolution that you have.
Well, then leave out the Bible. The Bible has no influence on whether the evolution is true, and your preferences, like, oh, I don't want this to be. It's got nothing to do whether it's true or not. It's just your wishful thinking.
So let me ask, SeaScience, what is your biggest roadblock to believing that evolution is true? That thinking that evolution is not true. What's your biggest stumbling block?
The biggest run right now for me is the nature of mutation.
The nature of mutation.
Yeah. It's because mutation is the main biological force that the theory of evolution relies on to create the many forms of animals. But it only seems to be a destructive force, one that creates disorders, one that creates new kinds of cancers. SFT's here, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I got distracted by everyone just going, well,
Donnie started it, right? We didn't start it.
It's true. We're all just reacting like programmed robots.
Yeah, absolutely. When somebody says something, we just ape them. We're really just.
But that's true. I will say, upcoming debate that maybe I think we're setting that up: the double decker versus Kent. But okay,
James W. Is that you? Is that you, James?
It is me. Oh, James.
Oh, awesome.
Amy and James. Yeah. Me and Amy versus Kent. It's coming up.
Yeah, Donnie, I've been in 8 hours. I'm just getting warmed up, mate. Okay, so the whole idea of sort of bringing up the Bible as it cannot be true.
I'm not drunk yet. I'm just getting started.
I'm just getting started. Just the whole idea is that we want to look at the evidence, not just sort of go to the Bible and say, hey, because the Bible says it can't be true, then it can't be true. I think I'll sort of voice back to Amy talking about what sort of adheres to reality or not, like whether it adheres to reality. And just the fact is that saying there's no beneficial mutations just is not true. I brought up a couple SeaScience. I don't know why you sort of brushed them off. I brought up Lenski Labs. I brought up the Chlamydius reinhardti. I brought up the algae is what I brought up, and that were just a couple of them. I could go into more if you would like. Trichomia is definitely a beneficial mutation for women, because that's the only people that get them. There's a lot of these sort of beneficial mutations. HIV what am I thinking of? It's not immunity, but it's sort of a
resistance.
Resistance, is definitely a mutation that helps out. And sort of you brought up E.R.V.s, and it could have just come into could come into the cell anywhere. That can't happen. And the reason why is because when you have a cell with sort of DNA inside of it, and then you get a retrovirus that inserts its own DNA, it will make a very specific place on the genome, and it will use transcriptase and integrase, the integrase to insert itself and the transcriptase to transcribe itself, its own DNA into that chain. Now, the chances of that happening on the same cell in the same place are so ridiculously improbable to be almost impossible.
Well, that sounds like an argument from incredulity.
Well, it's the fact that you have the placental development one, right? For instance, all mammals have that E.R.V. there. All of them do.
It's one of the things that makes a mammal, which I would argue is further evidence that that mutations, including and especially E.R.V.s, are software packages, downloads from the intelligent designer. Like, hey, here's your upgrade. Now you have placentas.
Well, that's weird that he makes it look like a virus and has like the ENV gag pole structure as well as the long terminal repeats on the other end, on the ends, which is created by integrase making the cuts in the DNA to insert itself.
Almost like it was designed that way?
Well, it's a weird design to make it look exactly like, when we look at science, we don't go, hey, well, let's see if we can find any conceivable reason why this would look like a retrovirus. And we have such a swath of evidence of the type of damage that retrovirus leaves and the structure when it inserts itself into DNA. So I don't know why we would say, hey, it was a magic man, when the simpler explanation is just it was an E.R.V. I don't know why we would say that. You're more than welcome, Donnie. I'm happy to round two, mate. More than happy.
Dun 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 dun.
Look, I got to admit, I got a soft spot for Donnie. I like Donnie. I can't help myself. I disagree with him. I still like him.
SFT.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a fair moderator.
He's a good sport.
Watch out. This time I have a fancy hat, Donnie. Don't forget about that. Don't underestimate the hat. Yeah, absolutely.
He's came on here and got grilled by Peter, and he took it like a good sport.
Hats like E.R.V.s.
Who? Donnie? Peter can grill. He's a grill master. Sorry, Ember.
Oh, it's all good. I was just saying that hats like E.R.V.s are software upgrades.
A software upgrade for my head? Okay.
Yeah. It gives you more room for your brain to stretch out, like leg room for a brain. Yeah.
Oh, she could go all night.
I always say, generally speaking,
it's 4 a.m. where I am. I'm just winging it.
See,
Nice.
if anyone, we're probably gonna be going out in 20 minutes. But if a creationist joins, we'll probably go on for a few more hours, a few more days. How much time do you have?
The preacher will be here. We may be here a week.
Week or two, exactly.
Oof. Perry.
A week of listening to Perry. Yeah.
It's going to be on all week.
Well, it does take a minute to finish a sermon properly,
And reading Bible verses to us, too, backwards.
Oh, backwards.
Welcome to the party, Caterpillar.
It's the only way to get to the Bible code.
Exactly.
Mark, are you ready? Are you ready? I've got a whole page here full of marks.
I've never been more ready in my life. Arguments from Donnie?
Allow me to steel man your argument, Mark. First of all, you believe that I am claiming a straw man, which is that the Bible proves the theory of evolution isn't true. I never claimed that once. I'm trying to steer clear of the Bible. Dude brought up biologos. Dude brought up religion. I'm sticking to the science, so let's stick to the science. You believe E.R.V.s proves that humans are related to chimps and other animals are related to other animals, and you don't believe that the E.R.V.s are front-loaded or placed there in the beginning as basically software, or that the E.R.V. section of the genome is basically an operating system for the genome, something that commands the rest of the genome, and that it's, that these sites are actually interdependent systems, and the reason all mammals have them is possibly because the same image was used to create all animal forms. You believe that the E.R.V. preferences, the E.R.V.s are coming in through virus infections, okay? You believe that the only way the two animals can have it in the same exact site in an animal genome, okay, is because they have a common ancestor, and I'm here to tell you that is not the case. Some of the reasons for the preference sites of E.R.V.s is actually the way that the nature of a virus and how it infects a host. Because a virus has to match the DNA of the genome of the animal that its host is, that it infects. That's why some viruses can't infect other animals, because they don't possess the DNA gene that it can attach to. Now, the reason that these preference sites exist, okay, and where they're at is because of the nature of the virus. It will actually affect that part of the genome on a mammal because it's a mammal. That's why cats, dogs, and humans can all catch some of the same viruses, and you have interspecies viruses. Another reason for these genetic markers, such as genes that are common between animals, beyond E.R.V.s, you have genetic markers that are actually genes that match between animals. They're actually pretty short genes in the most case. But here again, you have an instance where the same image is used to create many forms. Okay, so you'd expect to see that. You would expect to see that all the Legos, you know, the same Legos were used to create all the same forms if the same creator was making these forms, basically. You don't believe... All right. So, yeah, if you don't believe that E.R.V.s are front-loaded, then I challenge you, how could such interdependent systems like E.R.V. operating systems and genomes exist? That's my question to you. The creator didn't install.
Righty-ho. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So you basically said that I was straw manning you. I'm not sure how. I'm not saying
you
like
you're straw manning the
Bible
theory.
up.
You're straw manning. Yeah. Because I never claimed that the Bible
have some
proves
control over yourself. Have some control over yourself. So you were the one that brought up the Bible. I was simply addressing what you said about it. So I'm not sure why you would sort of say that. E.R.V.s are front-loaded an operating system. We're not a computer system. I don't know why you would sort of say that. But again, I've already addressed that, saying that even the long-term and repeats are not part of the code, if you will. They are part of the damage done by the insertion of that genetic sequence into the DNA of the host. So that is not part of the sequence, yet they are still there. All mammals have them. Yes, there's even ones that we share with fish, strangely enough. You're sort of saying how it infects the host that hatches a match. It is true that viruses do go for certain organisms because that's the ones that they infect. However, most of them do have a broad spectrum that they can infect. And even if that were true, it would still affect different animals in different places because it doesn't choose what section of the genome as it's bundled inside the cell it goes for. What it does is it just goes for the optimal place, the closest place to the edge. So you will narrow the amount that it inserts itself in because it will only insert around the outside, but that's still a massive area. All of that has been accounted for when we say that it could insert anywhere. Yes, there are limited places it can be, but those limited places are still in the thousands or even up to hundreds of thousands. It's not limited like, oh, it just goes for this specific part of the genome. Completely and utterly incorrect. It just selects this closest insertion point anywhere on the outside of that cell, and that's how it does it. And sort of all of that's accommodated by the ridiculous percentage of this. And don't forget that these E.R.V.s, we have seen them insert themselves time and time again. HIV is a retrovirus. We see it insert into people. And we have seen that virus mutate so it actually prevents disease and gives resistance to HIV. So we have seen these things turn beneficial. And that answers your question, how can independent systems have them? Because not all mammals are placental mammals. There are differences because marsupials split before that placental change occurred. So the marsupials, they use a pouch system. They're different. And the metronomes, and thank you for grabbing that sort of family name, Amy, they split before even then. So they are egg-laying, which means that they never got that endogenous retrovirus that caused mammals to be mammals. So the platypus still lays eggs. And that's why it explains it perfectly. But you cannot explain why in 205 separate locations in the chimpanzee and human, that virus has inserted to exactly the same place in the genome when it could have been any place among thousands and thousands and thousands.
It occurs to me that for that match to be the way it is,
Hang on, Amber. Let me just talk to this guy because he's really trying to talk at me. Listen, Mark Reid. E.R.V.s, if you really don't believe that they're front-loaded, like the majority of... I just let you talk for like 5 minutes. If you really don't believe that E.R.V.s are front-loaded, they're not part of an independent operating system that affects the genome, I challenge you to read a paper about preference sites that I can leave in the chat right now, and it tells you the reason that E.R.V.s choose preference sites. Do you know how many like E.R.V.s there are between humans and chimps?
205.
205?
I've said it I've said it multiple times.
How many? No, how many E.R.V. sections, like actually gene code sections, are like between humans and chimps? Actual individual sections of gene code are alike that are E.R.V. sections? How many are there? Is there more than a dozen?
205. Yeah, I keep saying it.
Yeah, there's 205 out of hundreds, out of tens of thousands of E.R.V. sites. Now, why are there so few like E.R.V.s between chimps and humans? Ember, you can open up anytime you want to. That's all I wanted to say to this, man. So you can see the other side.
Yep.
Why are there so few E.R.V. likenesses between chimps and humans, dude? If we actually evolved in the last 3 million years, how come there's only a handful of them in tens of thousands of E.R.V.s? Mm-hmm. Tell me.
Yeah, sure. Because mutation happens, right? And that the chances, because the E.R.V. has to be fixed and endogenized, so it has to be in every cell, the mutation has to happen in the germline. So it has to happen in the sperm or the egg. So you're talking not of an individual being infected, you're talking about an egg or a sperm being infected. So it has to happen in that germline. And there's a much less chance of that happening in a germline. It just doesn't.
Yeah, the only mutations that are handed down, or horizontally even, okay, are ones that happen to the gamete, dude. Because they're the only genes that are passed. So yeah, everyone knows that. Why don't you tell me something I don't know? Why don't you tell me why there are so few E.R.V. sites between chimps and humans?
Yes, but I'm not talking about a retrovirus like HIV, a retrovirus infecting one of your cells. What I'm talking about is a retrovirus infecting, not mutations, infecting a sperm and egg, which is the germ line.
Yeah, like I said, a mutation that happens to the gamete, okay, to the sperm or egg,
I'm not
is
talking
the
about
only
mutations.
mutation that can be handed on to new generations because, okay, those are the two those are the two cells that are, combining. So
yes. But I'm
tell
not
me
talking
why there
about
are
mutations.
so few E.R.V. likenesses between chimps and humans. You believe that the reason that we're related is because there's a handful. Why are there so few?
Yeah, I'll try to make this simpler. The reason why the E.R.V. sequence or the endogenized retroviral sequence is in every single cell of your body is because the only time that can happen is when meiosis, the cell division, when you are like originally born, copies that infection to every single cell in your body. So that means that it was the germline that was infected. The egg or the sperm was infected by a virus. So it's not the same as just somebody getting a HIV and their cells becoming infected. Because then what happens is they're in different... Hang on, let me finish. Then they would be in different parts of their cells all over their body. And we can tell that's happening because they do attack random. They do have preferential sites, but they attack random places. So that's what we find. So in the case of endogenous retroviruses, we know that virus infected the germline, and that is a very rare occurrence.
Yeah, so why do chimps and humans share so few if you really believe that they're related in the past 3 million?
And I will say, before you answer that, Mark, and you can answer it again if you want, but we got unless someone else decides to join, anyone is welcome to, but we are probably going to be wrapping up unless it gets any spicier. This has been Skeptic and Ranting, Why Evolution is Not True. It has actually been a fun back and forth, but yeah, time to get in your last questions or answers.
And spiciness.
Yeah, the point is that we shouldn't, if we are created separately, the humans and the chimps shouldn't share one, much less 205. It should be that viral mutation is in a different place in our development, or it's a different virus in our development that it is in chimp development. Because somewhere along the line, a chimp germline, a sperm or an egg, would have had to be infected by, let's call it the same virus, by some freak of nature. The chances of them happening to infect the same area at the same point is almost impossible. And then you've got to repeat that 205 times with that virus infecting exactly the same place. Now, sort of creationists want to say, oh, well, God front-loaded it like that when there is literally zero evidence for that. We've seen infections happen in germlines. We see that the organism has that GAG-E and V pole structure. I don't see any reason to invoke any kind of magic to put it there. It's just wishful thinking and trying to wave away the similarities between endogenous retroviruses in us and chimpanzees. Like a massive portion of your genome is endogenous retrovirus, and it's not just chimpanzees. We share ones with other mammals, with fish, with they're just spread out everywhere. Oh, so Evolution News is not actually an evolution site, by the way. That's actually a creationist site that has been dolled up. So everyone's aware of this. It's Evolution News and Science Today. It's actually a creationist site that tries to debunk it. So I'll go straight to the paper, which will be great. One relevant study. Here we go. Let's go directly to the paper. Yeah, no. SeaScience, Evolution News and Science Today is not a real journal. It's not. It's yeah.
You can kind of tell by the trending on the side. Joe Rogan and Stephen Meyer, Big Bang Refuted, William Shatner and Our Privileged Planet. It's wow, yeah. It's kind of ridiculous looking.
So you disagree with the information, right? Not with who was liking it. I mean, I know who likes the information, but you would disagree with the information there. Why the E.R.V.s might have preferences, but why are there so few? Why only a handful of E.R.V. sections between chimps and humans?
Yeah,
I mean, I know that
mutation
only is passed on if it happens to the gamete. But here's the thing, dude. The only mutation that's beneficial that gets passed on happens to the gamete too. So evolution depends on mutations that happen within the gamete. So how rare is it?
Of course it does, but there's a big difference between handing down your genome and mutation happening in the copying of a gamete than a virus infecting the specific cell that is the sperm or the egg. Yeah.
Well, it all depends on. It's because of the nature of viral infection. It's because of how viruses act within the DNA of the genome of an animal, man. Of a plant. Even plants can get viruses too. They have DNA. The reason that is because there's viruses that contain viruses. What they are is they're little sections of RNA or DNA floating around. Okay. And when they get onto you, they infect your genome, and they can only attach where they match your DNA or RNA. And that's how they infect you. Now, the reason that there's preference sites for E.R.V.s is because E.R.V.s are viruses. And if you really believe that they're not front-loaded and you believe that they're due to viral infection, if that's really what you're going with, then I got to ask you, why are there so few between chimps and humans?
How many preference sites are there?
How many viruses are there? I just explained it to you. The virus is a piece of RNA or DNA floating around, and the way that it infects a host is that it has to match the host's DNA or RNA. That's why some viruses can only infect some species, and some viruses are interspecies viruses.
Well, not all species are retroviruses.
Huh?
And not all viruses are retroviruses, and the fact that we can identify retroviruses shows that that's the thing that happens. Like, some viruses do go to the nucleus, insert themselves, and start making changes. We can observe that in laboratories, so we know how that works. That's why we draw the conclusions about the endogenous ones.
Yeah, we know how viruses infect the genome, and all viruses have matching sections of code, okay? Like, if you understand virus theory, this is all theory that we're talking about, because it's virus theory, okay? But the theory is that viruses, okay, it's not a theory that they're pieces of DNA and RNA, but it's all theory of how they infect the host, how they work.
I would like to read from SeaScience's paper now, the conclusions that they made from this. Genetic studies indicated that... No. I'd like to read from your paper that you sort of pointed me to.
Well, what you're looking for is in the Q&A
humans
part
and chimpanzees are the most closely related pair for most of the genome. However, for some fraction of the genome, they are not. Such data is consistent with the model in which alleles segregated differently upon the three eventual lineages. Some alleles that were polymorphic in the common ancestor of the gorilla, chimpanzees, and humans became fixed within the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees before the latter two lineages separated. Thank you for that paper, SeaScience. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. I hope that you read the Q&A part of it, because that's the section that actually includes the part about preference site.
Oh no, I'm reading the paper that they misrepresented, not the article. I go to papers, not sort of your sort of silly sites.
And all right, we have a new person to join the panel. SeaScience, you might be getting back up. We'll find out.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Though we are definitely only going for 30 to 40 more minutes, because we're going to be to hour 4 at that time. But I'm looking forward to the back and forth. We are Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true. Whoa. Donnie, what is up, SF2?
Hey,
we
man,
are Skeptic and Ranting.
Get an E.R.V. expert, I'm happy.
On why evolution is not true. It is wonderful to have you on. But before
Donnie, and I hope he's pleased with me, I hope one last question for Mark Reid. Amy, just one last question. Why do some animals share E.R.V.s with humans? Now, hang on, Ember. Why do some animals share E.R.V.s with humans, like mice, and humans share E.R.V.s that chimps and humans don't? Would that confuse you? Or say, like, if we were to find an E.R.V. within a gorilla that chimps don't have that humans do, would that confuse the hell out of you? Back to you, Donnie.
It doesn't. I just read out the paper that explained it, so, I don't know what to tell you.
And all right, we are Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true. Welcome on board, Donnie, and what are your thoughts about anything we've been talking about tonight?
Well, Amy and James, firstly, it is a privilege to be here for your awesome late night open mic. We have that in common. I enjoy my late night streams and open mic. Secondly, Mark, my good man, you have better endurance than me. And so I must confess, typically after 4 or 5 hours, I am discombobulated. But I just got done relaxing, watching a movie with the wife, and she fell asleep. And so I decided to turn into YouTube and see what's going on.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, you know what? E.R.V.s, Mark Reid on Amy's channel. I can't resist. Good to be here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Amy and James, we're going to be doing 2v1 plus open mic night coming up, so that should be fun. Mark will be there for the open mic part for sure.
Probably, yeah. Ready, and my body is willing for Dr. Dino.
So, Mark, nice hat. I'm jealous. Firstly,
everyone is.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% jealous. I love awesome hats, and that is way more awesome than any hat I have.
I had to put the cell phone closer to my face to see if that was one of those like Snapchat or Facebook. What do they call those things when you can
like a filter?
Yeah, a filter. There, you can tell it's late. I couldn't think of the word. Or legit, and it's legit, so that's impressive. So, anyways, it's good to be here, and yeah, I think there were some points and questions that were advanced by Mark that I think are good. They're legit, and I think as creationists, we need to have good answers to those arguments and challenges. Mark, if it's okay with you, since I did just join, I did catch bits and pieces of the discussion, but can you take some time to reiterate why you believe endogenous retroviruses
I softened them up for you, SFT. Sorry.
I know you guys are best buds. Yeah, so Mark, take your time. Maybe just go over briefly why you believe.
So I went through the basic E.R.V. sequence of integrase making a cut, causing long-terminal repeats in the edges of it, inserting the or transcribing that sequence into the DNA of the host. Essentially, it is selected at random around the outside of selection areas of where it integrates to. SeaScience was suggesting, or at least it sounded to me like he was suggesting, that it was specific places where it does have preference for places, but really it's the closest entry point to the genome on the outside of the cell it is infecting. I also explained that it cannot be the case that he suggested they were infecting the body like normal retroviruses do. I said that cannot happen because it has to infect the germline. He was trying to say, why do we only share 205 with chimpanzees? My response was 205. We shouldn't even share one if they are retroviral insertions, because the chances of them being in the same place is so minuscule. 205, we shouldn't even see that. He brought up that they were front-loaded in some way. I don't see any reason to believe they are front-loaded. They have all the hallmarks of retroviruses, and I see no evidence to suggest that is the case. I think that's about it. I'm trying to, like, sum up a large discussion into a very short amount of time.
Okay, Mark, I appreciate that.
Was that okay, SeaScience? Did I misrepresent you in any way? I wouldn't like to misrepresent people.
Yeah, and well, I think I've got...
I wasn't really listening, brother. I don't know. I was just kind of chatting with Amy.
Okay, well, let's just say it is. If I misrepresented, that's...
Well, did you ever answer the question of why E.R.V.s...
Well, Mark, let me just go back and forth with Mark. Well, there's two Marks, I guess. So, SeaScience, let me go back and forth with Mark on this topic in order to avoid too many rabbit trails there. So, essentially,
go for it.
You would argue, Mark, that the 205 full E.R.V.s, as you pointed out, LTR, GAG, POL, and ENV components of the E.R.V. Actually, Amy, if you don't mind, I've got a diagram of what Mark's talking about with the E.R.V. on screen. If you could, I think that'd be helpful for all of us. Okay.
Ooh, infinite regress.
There we go. So, yeah, that brief moment. So, as Mark was saying, we've got your classic E.R.V. We got different classes of retrotransposons or retro elements. E.R.V. is one of them. And so you can see the structure, as Mark has pointed out, LTR, GAG, POL, and ENV, or envelope protein. So this same structure is what we see with retroviruses as well. Exogenous retroviruses like your HIV, which would infect from outside. Endogenous meaning occurs from within. And so that sequence similarity would suggest to the evolutionist that these were ultimately derived from ancient exogenous retroviral infection. So, Mark, you would say those 205 plus you've got thousands of solo LTRs, right? That basically lack your key endogenous retroviral components. Those being shared between...
I just want to point out really quickly, and exogenous from the outside would infect in different places, and they have done tests to show that is the case.
Well, I agree that external viral infection occurs for sure. And we find nested hierarchical patterns in the distribution. I do remember you pointing out that we share more with the chimpanzee than we do with the gorilla or the orangutan or the old world, new world monkeys. So I think the question is, if these are actually viral infections, how can a creationist explain independently 200 plus endogenous retroviral elements integrating into the exact same genetic loci in humans and chimps if they were not inherited from a common ancestor, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the question that I typically ask, and it's definitely not new to you, Mark, is, are these really the ancient remnants of past viral infections, or are they mostly created units of DNA function? If they are created units of DNA function, at least the fixed ones, okay, we can get into that, then the reason why they are shared, let's say the 205 plus the thousands of solo LTRs that we find, is for common design reasons. The same reason all modes of transportation share an engine in common, if they are created units of DNA function. Now, I would argue that we do have examples of true endogenous retroviruses, but those would generally occur at a low frequency. For example, I typically cite a paper where they examine E.R.V.s, human endogenous retroviruses, and there's a subset of the human population that has a very specific E.R.V. And so I think we can safely conclude, yeah, that is the result of a true endogenization event, where basically an exogenous retrovirus integrated into the germ cell lines, egg or sperm, and then manage to be passed on to become endogenous. So I do believe that that happens, but I would argue the majority are reflective of initial design. And one reason I'd like you to speak to this, Mark, and take as long as you need. One reason why your endogenous retroviruses share that sequence similarity with exogenous retroviruses, the GAG, the POL, the E.R.V., the LTRs, is because amazingly, one of their functional roles involves tumor suppression. And they do this through viral mimicry. And so basically, transcribed E.R.V.s, they give the cell the appearance of being invaded by an external and harmful retrovirus. And as a result, by the way, this is stimulated by the p53 protein, the guardian of the genome, basically. The immune system targets that cell with more destruction, which as a result destroys those tumor cells. But this functional role can only be carried out if the endogenous retrovirus looks like the exogenous retrovirus that it's mimicking. And so it requires the GAG, the POL, the E.R.V., and the LTRs to perform that functional role. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. So when you say sort of, so I did get the exogenous, and I really want people to understand this. If an exogenous retrovirus, and that's one coming from outside that hasn't been infected the germline and become endogenous or a part of the normal genetic makeup, if that infects, it will be in all different parts of the genome in different cells. It will be in different parts. So I just want to make that clear. What is your mechanism? And I want to ask this sort of hypothetically. So if you've got these endogenous retroviruses, they have the same pattern as what you call the ones originating from a created design kind of thing. It seems to me there is no way to tell the difference between them. And I'll point you to, I think we've discussed it before, Phoenix Rising, where they basically got an endogenous retroviral sequence that was inert, and they reactivated it, turning it back into the virus. Because, yes, some of these have been co-opted to be beneficial. I can get papers showing that they've been co-opted, but some of them do nothing at all. Or there are retroviral elements which are devastating should a mutation return them to working order. So it seems to me like, Donnie, you don't have any way to distinguish between the three, except for, and I'm sorry to say this, what's sort of convenient for what you're saying, that the ones that do something good are not the retroviruses, they're created, and the ones that do something bad are the retroviruses. And, you know, you would understand why that wouldn't be a good solution to determine what has been created and what hasn't been created. You mentioned the P53 viral element, and I agree. If that's knocked out, it's absolute devastation, because it does do exactly what you say it does. And I'm not sure if you're saying sort of it mimics the ability of retroviruses to suppress other infections. I think it's described by scientists as just that is what it's doing because it is a retroviral element. And we've seen retroviruses do that before. That is what they do. In order to stop other things from infecting the host they have infected, they suppress other infections. So I don't know why we'd sort of appeal to a mimicry of the behavior when they might just be doing that behavior. And sort of you also have these other retroviral elements that, or, you know, if they are created things like you say, that we do knockout tests and knock out the genes and they do absolutely nothing, and we know they do nothing, like Phoenix Rising, which we can turn back into a virus. But my question to you is, what is your methodology for determining the difference between viral elements and these created segments, and how do you put that into a scientific lab to determine what's what?
Excellent question, Mark. I appreciate you asking it. So you brought up a few points, and I wrote them down as quickly as I could. And so your main question is, how can we tell the difference between a created E.R.V., a created unit of DNA function, and a true endogenous retrovirus, something that's actually the result of, and you, Mark, you explained it well, that essentially when an exogenous retrovirus infiltrates and infects a reproductive cell, if it's passed on, that the progeny has that viral DNA in every single one of its cells. Now, how can we tell the difference between that which is created and that which might be the result of a true infection that became endogenized. I would argue it comes down to fixed versus unfixed E.R.V.s. And so the majority of your E.R.V.s that we discuss, such as the 205 full E.R.V. components, as in the E.R.V.s that are not just solo LTRs, but actually have your GAG, your pole, your ENV components, okay, your LTRs on either side. Those are fixed. What that means is they are stuck in place. Every single human being has them, and all your chimpanzees have them, which is why the evolutionists would even argue we share them in the first place, right? They'd have to be fixed. Then you have what's called unfixed E.R.V.s. What that means is only a subpopulation has them. Okay, so in humans, those E.R.V.s, human endogenous retroviruses, there would only be a small frequency of people that have them, maybe 5%. There might be a higher frequency where 80% or 90% of people have them, but not 100%. And so how I would determine that which is fixed versus, or that which is created versus not created, is whether or not they're fixed. So if every single human being has them and the chimpanzees share in similar genetic loci those E.R.V.s, then I would say that those are most likely created. If they're unfixed and only occur in a low frequency, let's say within humans or chimpanzees, they are the result of a true infection. Before you respond, I do want to make a point about the Phoenix virus experiment, because that's important. And that's a good point. But the debate is not about whether or not internal endogenous retroviral elements can produce viruses, harmful viruses that can basically jump from one species to the next. Because the escapee hypothesis that we hold to, that argues retroviruses originated from within the genomes of their hosts, right? Because the question that I like to ask is, what came first, the host or the retrovirus? Because the retrovirus requires a host to replicate. And even many in the conventional literature, they would hold to what I'm saying, the escapee hypothesis, that basically your retroviruses came from within the genomes of their hosts, and then they've crossed species and have become infectious. So that's an agnostic line of evidence, because all the Phoenix virus experiment did was resurrected a dead virus from a host genome. Well, we already agree as creationists, at least I do, because I hold to the escapee hypothesis, that can happen. And so it's going to come down to your fixed versus unfixed E.R.V.s, but also function. So I would predict that those fixed E.R.V.s are going to have functional roles in the immune system, cell stress responses, determining cell types, gene regulation, gene expression, placental development, for example. And so that's the best way I'd answer your question, Mark. Go ahead, speak to that.
Yeah, I don't really see fixed versus unfixed as being particularly definitive on how to determine that these have some sort of function or not, because we've done knockout tests on fixed retroviral sequences and they don't do anything. The problem comes that it's sort of a post hoc kind of rationalization that you can say, hey, the fixed ones are there. I mean, we would agree that the fixed ones wouldn't be that detrimental because they have to be, but we know that if the fixed ones mutate, they can be cause genetic problems. Would you agree to that?
Good question, Mark. I don't believe it's post hoc because, well, firstly, to answer your question, yeah, there are a lot of endogenous retroviruses that can be hit with deleterious mutations, and that could lead to multiple sclerosis, for example. There's a lot of work done, right? Different, all types of diseases, right? That is essentially degeneration of a unit of DNA that wasn't originally involved in those kinds of diseases. But mutations can take a functioning, healthy DNA unit and alter it in a way where it causes disease. So I don't think that's an issue. But the nature of the fixed E.R.V.s it's not that every single ERV is going to have a role that is detrimental to the organism, right? So, for example, we've learned that mutations are not necessarily completely random. A lot of them are non-random because mutations oftentimes will target a spot of the genome that might not be involved in something dealing with the heart or something dealing with embryological development. Because if a mutation hits a specific section of the DNA involved with something as critical as the heart, well, the organism's going to die. And so typically those parts of the genome will be preserved, but mutations will more frequently hit regions of the genome that might involve redundant areas or even areas involving the immune system, because we have a lot of DNA elements that assist in the immune system. And so we could probably afford a few DNA elements being hit with mutations, but we still got a lot of backup code essentially. Does that make sense to you, Mark? And
yeah, it kind of, though, it seems like you are designating these retro, or what appears to be retroviral elements, or the created sequences that you're talking about, by their usefulness and functionality rather than by any kind of physical evaluation of them at all.
Well, I would argue if they're fixed, meaning every single human being has them, but they're also involved in some kind of function like tumor suppression, which involves viral mimicry. I mean, the endogenous retrovirus has to look like the virus that it is mimicking in order to perform its job. Like if an FBI agent was trying to infiltrate the mob, right? He has to look the part. He's got to look like the mob. You know, we've all seen those movies, The Departed, Goodfellas, so on and so forth. But if he showed up with his FBI badge and in his uniform, well, he's not going to get too far.
I'd go with the Terminator on that one, actually. Yeah. Like, you're a robot. You're here to kill everybody. You wrap yourself in the flesh so that none of the detectors can find you.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that a robot like Terminator has to look the part, so it's not, you know, caught in its disguise. So a lot of these E.R.V.s, they function in fighting off viral infections. They function in the immune system, and they do so by looking like the enemy, by looking like that which they fight. And so, yeah, if these are fixed, all 205, let's say, that all humans have, and they share with the chimpanzee, I would argue that those are the created units of DNA function. But there are many E.R.V.s that occur at a low frequency. They're unfixed, meaning not every single person has them. And so that would tell me, okay, they're probably damaging somehow. They're most likely disease causing, right? Maybe they result in the multiple sclerosis or types of autoimmune diseases. They're probably not functional, especially in something like embryological development. And that's partly why they're unfixed, because they were the result of an exogenous retroviral infection in the past. It became endogenized, but it only spread through a small part of the population. And we do have examples of that in humans. Does that make sense, Mark?
Not really. I just don't know why when creating a sort of a sequence in order to help us with something, that you would basically make it exactly like a retroviral sequence, including the LTRs, and then make some of them functional and then some of them non-functional, and sort of not activate them at all. That doesn't seem that the more parsimonious explanation does to be that they're simply the ancient remains of viruses, some of which have been co-opted, as we know that any part of the genome can mutate and have these become beneficial, especially in disease prevention, because of the way that retroviruses behave, even retroviruses like AIDS that are currently basically preventing infection because they want the host, and have been a result of common ancestry. I don't see why something would design it in such a way that there is so much, as through knockout tests, so much neutral area, and that the ones that do something useful for all intents and purposes seem to be the ancient remnants of those retroviruses with exactly the same structure, exactly the same marks left by their integration, and sort of say, well, that seems like the most probable explanation. To me, it seems like a very far-fetched explanation.
I appreciate those points. I would argue that the most parsimonious explanation is the created units of DNA function model, precisely because I've not seen a convincing response. And I've got a specific paper in front of me. Amy could either screen share or not a big deal, but in case people wanted to see it. And it's a paper from 2021. It's called Switching Sides, How Endogenous Retroviruses Protect Us from Viral Infection. It goes into, the paper is a fascinating read. It goes into each component, the E.R.V., the GAG, the pole. Okay, it goes into the details on how each component of the E.R.V. is actually necessary and required for the E.R.V.'s function in fighting off infections. And so I see it as front-loaded antiviral programs. And that screams of good design. I mean, our computers would crash after a long time without any kind of antiviral protection built in or added in as well. But these functional roles, one specifically being the role in embryological development. There's several papers that essentially point out if we didn't have these endogenous retroviruses in our systems, mammals wouldn't exist, as in we literally require them to exist. And so my challenge to the evolutionist is show me where an exogenous retrovirus has infected, like HIV, that's an exogenous retrovirus. Where have they ever infected in the right way, which is in the reproductive cells, has been passed on, and then through mutations over time, basically the harmful parts of the endogenous retrovirus are destroyed. And then through either co-option or beneficial mutation accumulation, that E.R.V. evolves something that is necessary for placental or embryological development. You know, my challenge is to the evolutionist is to show us how that's possible, how that's happened in the past, and if we've observed it today, either in nature or the lab. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this switching sides, it absolutely disagrees with you and says that they were co-opted retroviruses, and they've outlined all of the viral infection and simulation that they've done to show that they were retroviruses. So this paper that you've said, and I've actually got it in my list of papers to support the endogenous retroviral evolution model, because it 100% supports it. You know, so sort of they've been identified as pre-existing viral matter. So this paper doesn't help your case because they've explained how it has been co-opted. So yeah, this whole idea that they have been included somehow, I don't know how this paper helps you. What was the other thing you asked? You asked for where a retroviral element has infected humans and what? Sorry, I do apologize. I was kind of lost in the paper.
No, that's okay. I'll reiterate it and then I'll respond to your point thereafter when you're done with your arguments. Essentially, I pointed out how without endogenous retroviruses, the placenta being critical to pregnancy and embryological development. Right. Have we seen that kind of?
So it's not critical to pregnancy. It's not, because we've got animals that are very similar to mammals, yet they give birth without sort of a placenta. So we've got the marsupials that do not have that retroviral element in it, that do use a pouch system and an embryonic sac to instead they don't have a placenta. And that's kangaroos and koalas, and very similar animals to the ones we have today. We have the monotremes, which don't even have a sac, and they're further on. They don't have the retroviral elements that produce live young. They have a shell system still, because that did not split off. So when you say it's necessary for pregnancy, in mammals, yes, because we all have split off with that retroviral element, but there are other animals without that retroviral element. And they're very similar to mammals, but they split off just before that developed. So I can show that that's completely incorrect. We do not need that retrovirus to become pregnant, only to become pregnant as placental mammals, and that's all.
Okay, I appreciate those points. Those are good points for me to address, and so I'll do them in turn. So first, you pointed out how the paper claims that these functional roles involved in the immune system were co-opted, but they don't actually provide any evidence for this co-option. They don't show us how or when or where a pre-existing endogenous retrovirus gained a novel function in the immune system, or determining cell types, or in tumor suppression with their role in viral mimicry. They're basically just asserting it without evidence. So assertions without evidence isn't a real good line of argumentation. So you need to see or provide evidence for these novel functions coming about. But I find it funny because the evolutionists oftentimes ask, well, why do the E.R.V.s look like retroviruses? Why are they built the same way? Why do they have the LTRs, the GAG, the POL, the ENV? And it's like, we point out as informed creationists, well, they require their sequence similarity to retroviruses to literally carry out their various functional roles. But it's not good enough. And it makes me wonder if the evolutionist really is looking for an answer, because that is an answer. They require those similarities in order to basically do their job. And so the next point you made was, and I do mean this in the nicest way possible, but I feel like you completely dodged it, Mark, because again, you didn't show us anywhere or provide any technical paper that has actually demonstrated an exogenous retrovirus infecting in the reproductive cell lines, whether egg or sperm, being passed on, mutations then wipe away over time, because this is in theory how it's supposed to take place. Mutations wipe away the harmful aspects of the endogenous retrovirus, and then eventually through co-option or beneficial mutation accumulation, it evolves the ability to function in embryological development. I don't want evolutionary philosophy. I want to actually see in real time, empirically, how this is possible. You pointed to different modes of reproduction. Animals without a placenta, some mammals with a placenta. Okay, that's not telling us how the endogenous retroviruses evolved the ability to function in the placenta. Yeah, we have a variety of designs in the biological world. I mean, just look at engines and modes of transportation. You've got a diesel, you can get an electric car, you can get a regular engine, you can get a hybrid. Okay, yeah, there's a diversity in engines, but just saying that, well, a diesel engine exists, and so that means, you know, an electric car or a hybrid car, it's possible to not have a diesel or something like that. No, you're not telling us how the placental development came about. Yes, we see variation in the biological world. It's not really a surprise, but I want to see how an endogenous retroviral element can actually go from something that's non-functioning to something functioning in embryological development. And that is my challenge. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to share my screen. I put the articles in here. So the problem here is that it's not claiming anything. That's its conclusion. So I think sort of saying, well, it claims this is a bit misleading, to be honest with you, because it's the conclusions of the paper that you're citing, Donnie. So, you know, if your paper doesn't come to the conclusions that you want, change what paper you're referencing. This is a paper that is in their citations, I might add, so you probably should have backtracked the citations, that the HIV-1 infection leads to increased transcription of human endogenous retrovirus, E.R.V.k, proviruses in vivo, but not to increased viron production. So it was not replicating, yet it protected against proviruses. There's another one that I have that they also referenced. So this is the reference they provided because they're not just sort of saying this out of the blue, but in that paper, they will make citations to the papers that they're building off. And that's what you've got to go see, because they will cite these papers saying, hey, we know that they are co-opted from these papers, and that is what's providing us the thing. I've shared the other one. Anyway, this is TRIM28 mediates primer binding site-targeted silencing of marine leukemia virus in embryonic cells. So that's one affecting, as you asked for,
can you
straight
share
from
your
the
screen,
embryo.
Mark?
I thought I was. Sorry, I may not have been.
No worries.
Yeah,
I think Amy or James from your end.
It never came up on me.
Yeah. I put them in the chat as well. Okay. So if you do need a reference, they're in the chat as well.
Okay, I pulled them up. Keep going, Mark. Apologies.
Yeah. So when you're looking for like we've got to know the exact mechanisms, exactly how this occurred in placental development, we might not be able to show that. I mean, we can show the endogenous retrovirus that's led up to placental development, and we've got tons of papers on them that it was a retroviral element that was co-opted in order to provide this thing. But you're sort of saying, hey, I want to see the virus before it was co-opted, and I'm not sure we can show you that. Too much water under the bridge. It's been changed way too much. It's been mutated way too much. So I think that's an unrealistic expectation. But what we can show is that these viral elements do infect things and they do get co-opted. So there's no reason to think that it was the creation of some design. Instead, it is what it appears to be, which is the co-option of a retroviral element that has been inserted at the germline.
I appreciate those responses and papers, Mark. I do hear a lot of background noise or echo coming. James, I wonder if it's from you. Okay.
Yeah, everyone else is muted, yeah.
Amy, if you could, or James, share my screen as well, because I did pull up those papers that Mark has cited. And so I see that, Mark, as an admittance, and I appreciate it. An admittance into the fact that, yes, these co-option events, the evolution of these novel functions, by the way, that the conventional literature admits, if we didn't have these elements with these functions, we literally wouldn't exist. And so when an evolutionist asks an intelligent design proponent, why do we share these elements with the chimpanzee? I feel like they're not necessarily steel manning the position or understanding the design hypothesis. Because if we have DNA elements that are literally necessary for biological life to exist and function in the first place, that's like asking, why do GMs and Chryslers share engines? I mean, you can get rid of a lot of parts on a car and the car is still going to function and run. But the second you get rid of the engine, chances are that car is not going to go too far. So many E.R.V.s function in cell processes that if they're hit with a mutation, it's not necessarily going to kill the organism. There's a lot of backup code, a lot of backup genetic elements. But an element like some of these E.R.V.s that function in the placenta, yeah, that's necessary in order for life to survive or exist in the first place. And so I've got a whole presentation on that paper, the original paper here that we're talking about, switching sides. And as you can see here, they go into how the LTRs act as enhancers and increase antiviral gene expression. They go into the functions of the E.N.V. proteins and how they're associated with these immune system related functions, the GAG proteins as well, right here, besides E.N.V., endogenous retrovirus GAG proteins can also restrict retroviral replication. And so everything about the E.R.V. is necessary, is my point. And so it's no surprise that they look like the retroviruses that they're protecting us against. So here's the papers from Mark. And I'm just looking over them.
So if you don't mind, Donnie, you can actually take as long as you want to finish up your point. But then after you have a point and Mark does, I'm actually going to hand it back over to you, Donnie, for your for everyone's outros. But you sounded like you were just finishing up a point. Take all the time you need.
I appreciate that, Amy. You're a great host, and you're a very fair moderator. So that is much appreciated. And Mark is always an excellent interlocutor. Seriously, when Mark joins the open mics, I think to myself, here we go. This is going to be a good show, because that's the whole reason why we do these discussions, is so we can have some interesting back and forth.
Exactly.
And that goes for passionate back and forth. So I'm going to read these papers, of course, on my own. But I would just appreciate if Mark showed me where in these papers we are seeing empirical or real-time evidence or even a direct answer to my challenge. You know,
Well,
like here it says
your challenge was specifically about placental.
So are these papers showing how the immune system roles came about?
No. You said that like you wanted evidence for placental, the retrovirus that sort of allowed us to have placental development.
Well, you can go down the line. E.R.V.s function in determining cell types. They function in cell stress responses. Gene expression, that's basically the process by which a gene gets turned on in a cell to make RNA and proteins. And guess what? E.R.V.s are involved in that. Gene regulation, the regulation of the process known as gene expression. So any of these functional roles, you know, show me how any endogenous retrovirus evolved this functional role. And if an evolutionist can't show me that, it's evolutionary philosophy. It's not actually science. It's just an assertion and a claim. And these papers can conclude all sorts of things. But if those conclusions are not backed by empirical scientific data, then it's a conclusion not based on science. It's mostly based on story.
Well, science is inference, and that's what we can infer from having these retroviral elements co-opted. So there's no reason to think they were created if they can be co-opted. And sort of the whole idea of
where does it show them being co-opted?
Hold on a sec, Donnie. The whole idea of we wouldn't exist, which is what you said, we would exist, we just wouldn't give birth by placental means. We would probably give birth by, you know, monotremes, like we would lay eggs, or we would have a sac, an embryonic sac like kangaroos. The whole idea that you're sort of saying, hey, but we wouldn't exist. Yeah, not exactly as we are now, but that's sort of, there's no counterfactual to that. Because we did evolve this ability, you can't say, well, we wouldn't exist because we would. Because there are animals that do exist and give birth. And you said it again, that they're required for pregnancy. No, they're not required for pregnancy. And the fact that there are animals without these E.R.V. sequences that do give birth, whether through embryonic sac or egg, shows that it is not essential for life, as you sort of. So you said directly, in order for life to survive, and that is not true, because there are. I'm not sure what you're typing out. Do you want to maybe? In order for life to survive, no, there's life forms without these E.R.V. sequences as you go further and further back. And this is the nested hierarchy that we're talking about. The further away from us on the evolutionary tree you get, the less E.R.V. sequences are shared between life forms. So you're saying it's essential to survive, but other things survive without them. We just may be more optimal because we have evolved, and these mutations have actually been beneficial. Again, you've quoted the paper Switching Sides. The entire point of switching sides is that once damaging and detrimental viruses can be co-opted to be beneficial, and that's exactly what they've pointed out. I've given examples where viruses are co-opted by mutation to be beneficial to their host, and those are the citations they use to show that it can happen. And as a product of inference, they have made this inference quite tentatively. I think that they're not exactly, sort of saying, hey, we've figured it all out. But they've certainly said, hey, there is no reason to think these were created when they look like endogenous retroviruses, they act like endogenous retroviruses, but they have been co-opted, like we have seen time and time again, to be beneficial for the organism. Again, you mentioned that it's necessary. No, they're not necessary. Other life forms exist without these viruses. The whole thing, what it seems to me, is you're sort of saying, well, if it's beneficial, it was created. And there's no reason to think that whatsoever. So as you go further and further back, you've got to explain how, if it is so necessary, how life forms actually exist without these E.R.V.s.
And Donnie is going to be able to answer because he is going to get his outro. We all are going to get our outros. He was just the latest to join us, which means he's the first to go, and we're going in the opposite order we came in. We have been Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true, and we are going to our outros. Woohoo! With that, we're going to hand it off to Donnie. Thank you so much, SFT, for joining us tonight on Skeptic and Ranting. But we have very specifically have been talking about why evolution is not true. Dun, dun, dun. I want to thank you. What do you have got going on in the interwebs? And what are your final thoughts on the subject as a whole?
Appreciate it, Amy. This has been a lot of fun, and we definitely need to do more of this. I love discussing this topic, and I especially love discussing this topic with informed interlocutors. Makes it a lot more fun and engaging. And so my last points, based on what Mark said, to me, it's like saying, well, an electric car requires an electric engine to run properly. But it doesn't really require an electric engine to run properly because we've got cars that run on a diesel engine or a regular engine or hybrid or whatever. Well, what we see in the biological world are some creatures that reproduce or exist with a placenta and some that don't. So you can't point to the ones that don't, and therefore, well, the placenta, in these mammals must have evolved. That's just an assertion. That's just evolutionary philosophy. We need supportive evidence for that, and that is still my challenge. That I feel like after years and years of engaging the topic of E.R.V.s, we've yet to see this co-option that is often claimed. We've yet to see these pre-existing endogenous retroviruses going from non-functional to something functional in embryological development, functioning in the immune system, cell stress responses. Again, we talked about their role in tumor suppression. Literally, they could not carry out that role if they did not look like the enemy, if they did not have those sequence similarities to exogenous retroviruses. But this all comes down to, or back to, and here's the last thing I'll say, the bigger question, which is what came first, the retrovirus or the host? Because retroviruses require a host to replicate. And so with the Phoenix virus experiment that Mark talked about, it's agnostic, because I already agree that viruses can come from host genomes and can originate from pre-existing E.R.V.s. And so if the escapee hypothesis is true, then we expect all of this data. So I appreciate, actually, last thing I'll say, nested hierarchies. Yes, if these are created units of DNA function, Mark pointed to nested hierarchies, then yes, it's no surprise that we would share more with the chimpanzee than we do with an orangutan or a dog or a fish, because we already share more in terms of morphology and anatomy and physiology with a chimpanzee than we do with something like a dog. And that's why it's all going to come back to that important question: are these really the ancient remnants of past viral infections, or are they created units of DNA function? How can we answer the question of what is created and what's not? I point back to fixed versus unfixed E.R.V.s. And this was a lot of fun. Amy, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Woo-hoo. Thank you so very much, Donnie. This was a lot of fun. Go check out SFT's channel. He does a lot of fantastic debates between theists and atheists. And keep on coming on. And we're going to go right down the list. I will also say before I get to Ember, also just, that's right, Beamsy, glad to see that. We are, like I said, we like to talk etymology. We like to talk about epistemology, and sometimes we just like to talk about that ass. But we're going down to Ember. It's the type of high-level conversation. Ember!
Very sophisticated show.
Very sophisticated. Where you like to sip wine. We have been Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is not true. Dun, dun, dun. I hope you had a lot of fun. Where can people find you? What are your final thoughts?
Alrighty. Well, I'm usually over at my channel, Better Than Ember. But I do pop around. You know, I was on Doc Dino's after show, obviously over here. And this weekend, last I heard anyway, things get a little changey with MDD, but Mark and I are slated to do a 2v2 on Saturday. So that should be really cool. Final thoughts. My goodness, there was a lot of really rarefied data floating around today. It was really something. Personally, I can't say that I'm really convinced by the design argument, because when you boil it all down, it comes down to a argument from incredulity. We can't prove it's not the result of a creator or intelligent designer, but we haven't seen any evidence of things like E.R.V.s or exogenous retroviruses being created. You know what I mean? It comes down to the same chicken and egg problem with everything else. There is no evidence of anything poofing into existence. As far as the actual chicken and egg problem of whether the viruses evolve first or the host evolves first, what have you, that's answered by everything else we see in the natural world. The viruses, like any other kind of parasite, evolve along with their hosts. They mutate, we mutate, and the ones that mutate that can continue to infect us are the ones that get selected. The same thing with the E.R.V.s. If a species encounters a lasting infection, if it provides a survival advantage, then that gets passed on. If it does not, then it's selected against. It's not random chance. Natural selection favors an advantage. That's all it cares about. There's no randomness to it whatsoever. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the real winner of this entire discussion is Mark's hat.
I warned him I had.
I agree. Thank you so very much, Ember, for coming on and having great conversation. You should all check out Better Than Ember out there on the YouTubes. And lovely having you.
Thank you.
My chair keeps on getting co-opted by cats and dogs. I also have
I appreciate
big
that.
puppers that was like, I need to spend time right now.
Hello, Cooper.
Exactly.
Besieged by mammals.
But with that, we're going to keep on.
You do give milk, by the way. They do make milk.
James, did you know that? I was going to say, Rachel always looks at me and quotes that. She's like, did you know milk anything with nipples? I'm like, thank you. And all right, we're going down. Once again,
It's my favorite activity.
Is the type
does Rachel hook up the
hard-hitting theological
get anything out of it?
Once again, those are called Tuesdays.
Just keep trying. You'll maybe eventually you'll get some milk out of it.
Right next to Taco Tuesday. It's Milk Day. Mark, we have been Skeptic and Ranting on why evolution is...
Aye, aye, Captain.
Not true. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, my.
No, it's probably a terrible salute. I do apologize to Beamsy and all concerned. Yeah, so I always find the sort of engine analysis really weird and strange, because there's no fixed anything in engines. Like, you can't fix anything because there is no propagation of those genes, because engines don't have genes. It is a weird argument, because when you're talking about mutations, you're talking about endogenization of retroviruses. There is no mechanism for passing DNA, because there is no DNA. It's the weirdest thing. I don't understand it. I really don't. You cannot make an analogy between electric engines and human DNA. It's just not possible. I don't understand it. Nested hierarchy, yeah, and we see, like, not only do we see these things with benefits, we see also the same remnants of retroviral elements that do nothing whatsoever. So I think in order to even approach that they were created, you've got to explain why they were created to do absolutely nothing. And sort of we could do knockout tests and they have no functionality. So you've got to explain that somehow. I think that Ember was absolutely right. It's an argument from incredulity. I don't see how evolution could work. So we've got to come up with these ideas of, well, even though we see retroviral elements doing this, we see them inserting like this, we see them making the same patterns, we see them providing immune benefits like the HIV virus versus HMLT2, I think it is, or one of the E.R.V.k viral elements. It provides sort of a resistance to it. That has to be a created element rather than everything we see in front of me. I think that has no reasonable evidence for it, whereas the other one, we have a ton of evidence suggesting it's the case from all of the things that I've been through. So sort of asking for this specific case of placental development when saying, hey, life wouldn't be possible without this placental. No, it definitely would be possible. It just humans wouldn't be here. But that's sort of taking assuming the consequent kind of thing, or sort of, sort of saying, hey, if humans didn't have this thing, then we wouldn't be here, therefore it was created. No, that none of the evidence points that way. So I mean, Donnie can bring up studies. They do disagree with him. I agree with the authors of the studies that they have been co-opted. We've seen co-option happen. If you do check the citations of that paper and, check it out, yes, that's exactly what they're saying. So I'm going to go with the people who wrote the paper rather than, unfortunately, some people have a religious interest in it not being true. And that's unfortunate because they don't have a lot of evidence for that apart from their incredulity that it could happen naturally, and that isn't an argument. Thank you. Aye,
Captain.
Permission to come aboard.
I was just thinking of something, and Beebsy's already out there.
Ahoy!
Which I will say, Mark, as a NASA
I am an able seaman.
You are allowed to do this.
Hey, this is just my support of the community. Love you all. Hang in there. And, just so much love going out to you. I 100% support the LGBTQI community. Much love to everybody.
Woohoo! Thank you so very much, Mark.
Is not an able seaman. She is a seaman guzzler.
Wow. I believe
Once
it.
again, I just like to think that I'm just going out there to. Man, I can't. I'm trying to think.
Doing the Lord's work, Amy.
I'm doing the Lord's work. I try to make the seamen stand tall. I don't even know. Nonetheless, it is 5 a.m. You can feel the gears. We're going to hand it over to our open mic headliner because there's only the people driving the plane after this.
There can only be one, Amy.
There can only be one. No, my favorite thing still is now we have had someone tell us that they have a sexual relationship with God, and we've now had someone tell us they've had a sexual relationship with Satan. I feel like we need to get these two people together and just, maybe we can end the war, James. This is how you end the forever war between God and Satan. Is like a really nice night with wine and cheese. Nonetheless, SeaScience, we have been skeptic and ranting with why evolution is not true. That's right. I hope you had a good time. What you got going on out there, and what are your final thoughts?
I have had a good time, and I want to thank you for having me on, Amy and James. It was great getting to talk to Mark about some things. And he brought up quite a few points. He galloped a bit, it's true. He brought up 9 points in about 5 minutes. I only got to really talk about one. But since this is why evolution is not true, we'll start with the barriers for evolution, which was mutation. The nature of mutation is that mutation is a destructive biological force. It's proven to be what has caused every disorder that we know about and every form of cancer is because of mutation. It's not a creative force. and it doesn't have what it takes to create the many new forms or the many forms of life that we know now. Another thing that Mark brought up was a straw man of the argument that young Earth creationists bring up a lot of times, is that they believe the animals change into other animals over time. He's trying to claim that young Earth creationists are claiming that cows change directly into an antelope, and we want to see evidence of that. That's not what we're asking for. All we're asking for is some evidence that speciation in the animal kingdom even happens, like an offspring that can no longer interbreed with its host species somewhere down the line. Just getting an example of that. So he's really misrepresenting the unearthed creationist argument, because they even go as far as to ask, like, just show us bacteria that has speciated or even turned into a multicellular organism, but even into anything else other than the bacteria that it is. So it seems like evidence for speciation or the common ancestry of all life is lacking at best. There's a lot of barriers against it. He brought up E.R.V.s. We showed that E.R.V.s have reasons for preference sites. Okay, there's reasons that they're found within multiple species in the same places. That'd be because of the nature of viral infection. It only infects where it can, and that's where it matches the genome of the host that it's infecting. So there is a reason for these preference sites. If he really believes that it wasn't front-loaded from the beginning, because E.R.V.s seem to be pretty functional. If he believes that they were viruses that infected the genome sometime in the distant past, I asked him, why are mice and humans sharing E.R.V.s that chimps and humans do not? And he had no answer to that question, and he had no answer to why there's so few E.R.V.s between chimpanzees and humans. He tried saying it's because they have to infect the gamete. Well, any mutation that's passed on to the next generation is something that affects the gamete. It has to. So that's basics of basics of biology there. So I mean, everyone understands that. The fact is, there's only a handful of like E.R.V.s between chimps and humans. So why are there tens of thousands of E.R.V.s that do not match between chimps and humans? Could the E.R.V.s be because of a different reason, like the reason that there are like E.R.V.s between humans and chimpanzees or humans and mice? Could it be because we share the same environment and the same viruses, and the viruses have preference sites that they adhere to when they infect the genome of the host? I think that could be why. I think it's a really good reason why. And I think there's plenty of reasons to question evolution and to not believe in evolution. One of them, again, being mainly that mutation is a destructive force. So I'm going to close with that. And also, wait, not yet. Also the fact that his beneficial mutations are so few and far between, even if they happen to benefit the creature. He has to imagine billions of beneficial, almost directed seeming mutations, okay, perfectly inserted, to believe that all forms are a product of mutation. That is a huge leap in logic, and I'm not willing to accept it. If he's looking for confirmation that it's believable, he's not going to get it from me. That's what I'm going to close on.
Woohoo! Thank you so very much, SeaScience.
Thank you, Doorknob Head, for your comment, too.
And sending love. And before I about to hand it off to the co-pilot that's going to help us land this plane, but I do want to send love. I saw Donnie saying he's logging off, and we're sending that love as James and myself are going to be heading over to his channel, Standing for Truth, as we have our 2v1. I'm looking forward to that, James, just because unlike what I imagine as a normal 2v1, we already have our like kind of chemistry that, but maybe but maybe that's what he's saying, expect the unexpected.
Both of the atheists, and
both of them.
With one whale dick tied behind my back.
James, do you know how big a whale's... And with that, we have been Skeptic and Ranting.
Dr. Hovind did a scientific paper on that. I'll refer you to the Journal of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey.
That's what his thesis was, right?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kent Hovind. Yeah. It's a very scholarly work, Amy. It was scholarly.
Oh, it is. And it's hands-on. That's what I like about it the most.
But, yeah. Well, thanks, everybody, for staying with us this long. We got 18 people watching. You guys are amazing. We love you guys. And good conversation, good debate between SeaScience, Mark, Ember, Donnie. It was a lot of fun. Good conversation. That these are the kind of shows that we love. And we'll be back over the weekend. Stay tuned for more. We love you guys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much, James. That's right. You should all be checking out. There's many fantastic channels, like we were just shouting out. We will be on Donnie's channel, but you should also see Science. You still doing uploads on the old YouTube?
Oh yeah, from time to time. Yeah.
I got a question for SeaScience. Why is your uploads just the same like clip with nothing to it? Like there's no actual content in it. What's that all about?
Oh, you can see my uploads because you blocked me. I didn't think you could see me, man. The last couple were about you. If you want to know the truth,
ages ago I noticed that it's just like non-content kind of thing. Are you just like doing minutes or something?
Marky, do you mind if I make a video about our little talk today?
Well, this is like a question. Like, what's that all about?
Well, I didn't hear it. What would you say?
Well, all of your videos, when I looked at it, were like just the same clips with nothing in them, exactly the same length with just some music and like clips, and didn't have any actual content in them. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah, I don't even know what you mean. What are you talking about?
Oh, that sounded sincere, sure.
Do my clips not work when you click them? Maybe you should unblock my channel, man. If you unblock my channel, maybe my clips will work.
Yeah, maybe you should unblock them. Go ahead.
The last clip I uploaded was hilarious.
You sounded really sincere, like you didn't know what I was talking about. That was good acting right there. That was really good.
All right. But with
Oscar
that,
to SeaScience.
SeaScience says the channel.
Very cheeky, mate.
Go check out Standing for Truth. Better Than Ever was doing streams either today or yesterday. I was just seeing you doing some amazing stuff. Mark Reid, Atheism. You should be checking him out. Dr. Dino was doing a stream with Dr. Dino.
Which one is the real Dr. Dino?
That's James.
The Dino debate.
That's right. You have to throw a knife in, and only one comes out. Anyway, we do the shilling. It has come time for the shilling. Here we go. If you'd like to be, that's right. If you'd like to be produced by someone who's related to someone who owns space lasers, then there you go. At Fiverr, I can help produce you and get your podcast started. We have many fantastic ways to help support the show, but I should actually say, thank you, Misfits, for joining us on this episode of Skeptic and Ranting. Why evolution is not true. Dun, dun, dun. Well, that's right. We watched a video from the channel Tomorrow's World, which sounds like a post-apocalyptic game, called Why Evolution is Not True. 4 major flaws exposed, which ended up being the same creatures. Yes, also indecent exposure. For a good time worth monkeying around. However, I do want to thank my co-host, James W., along with Vanna White. No, along with our guests, SeaScience. Ding, ding. Yes, I hear the ding. No, I told I told the therapist I don't have yet that the dig, it can't really be real. It can't be physical. It has to be some sort of abstract. I'm just kidding. Go check it out.
Strange ringing in my ears.
Exactly. No. Go check out Peter on Gonna Go For It and R&Ra, Atheist Jr., and on Randolph Richardson's stream with Taco. I need to talk with Taco. I want to have a show on politics. Not for anything probably productive. And
are you sure you want to go back to politics? Remember the last debate on politics?
My God.
That was a disaster. Not your fault, of course. You
No, I know.
You were beautiful as always, but that guy was a disaster.
It's okay.
You know what? I just want to also add. I challenged Praise for a debate on evolution on your channel, and he never got it. Just silence.
Really?
Just silence. Yeah.
Big Bad Mama, where are you? You should be debating for. I mean,
I'll debate Big Bad Mama.
Praise,
I'll take them on. Take them on.
That's right. Come on. I don't know. I forget what his version of. Not Trinitarian. There's like some debate that Praise is always trying to take in that the Christians are having. But it's always so abstract that the Muslims and Jews, it's like whether you're going to be accepted into heaven and the Calvinists, all that fun stuff. How about our guests, our lovely guests, SeaScience, Mark, woo-hoo, Amber, woo-hoo,
yay,
and Donnie, woo-hoo. Thank you, SeaScience, Mark, Amber, and Donnie, as well as the people in chat. What's up, chat? Our awesome mods who make this stream so great, including our lovely admin. He knows who he is. And lovely viewers like you who make this channel even possible. That really symbol was about like a second too late. That's okay. If you enjoyed the show, please like, because it goes into the algorithms and all that stuff. The YouTube gods, the only gods that exist. Thank you, TOS. Thank you. They're actually not that bad. It's the people who spread conspiracy theories and misinformation. I was trying to tell you that panties are trying to eat all of the dogs. Okay. Whatever. They're going to turn the frogs gay. And follow on twitch.tv/Amy Newman Skeptic. Subscribe if you are on YouTube's. Oh my, what's up? We're doing it live. Hi, YouTube. And then hit that bell icon so you can join our live streams or see our premieres. But hi, chat. Or hey. And I'm not going to make... we're going to be good to this person I used to make fun of because they're trying to get better. Or hey, leave a comment once the video's done. It's almost hard not to do extra flair. You can also leave super thanks, which is like a super chat. In fact, thank you to all the people who did give us super chats. After the show, we'll be heading over to the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below, along with all of our fantastic channel members. In fact, you can get our evolving badge system. They say evolution doesn't exist, but our badge system evolves.
It says otherwise.
Sir, this conversation is being recorded.
What? And though the best way as well to help us make even more fantastic content and unlock some unique perks is by checking out our Patreon and becoming a supporter. Who doesn't like hearing me clickety-clack at patreon.com.
They love it. They love every minute of it.
Themes. It is who doesn't love a mechanical keyboard? Everyone. Oh my goodness. A $2 super chat at the very end from Doorknob Head.
Doorknob Head.
Thanks, Doorknob.
Hey, I solved my mechanical keyboard issues. When's the last time you heard my clickety-clack?
Did you?
Yeah.
Woo! Sending so much love.
I'll share the secret. I'll share the captain's secret.
Okay. Or do you mean after stream?
After stream.
Oh, okay. Understandable.
But do like, subscribe, share, click the bell, and get more Amy Newman goodness at all hours of the day when you least expect it.
That's right.
Often when you least expect it.
Right.
Often.
But it's a good way to get more experience before you hit your next Pokemon gym.
Sure.
Sending so much love, Doorknob Head. So much love to everybody in chat. I think that is all of the shilling. There can't be any more possible. No, that is it. We will see you all in the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z. Go check out Ember and Mark. And we love you all. Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Yeah.